Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Ms. Hodges, absent. Mr. Mills?
Here.
Mr. Oden?
Here.
Ms. Rose Spurgeon? Here. Mr. Kleindienst?
Here. We'll turn immediately to report on the posting of the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the agenda you have before you was posted in accordance with council procedures last Thursday, July 3rd, 2003.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Welcome.
Dana is absent tonight, and we're going to, of course, excuse her absence due to medical conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We'll turn to public comments on matters discussed. Limit to the agenda. Anyone wishing to discuss any matters before the council's agenda tonight, please come forward at this time.
Mr. Mayor?
Nope. Push the button where it says push.
Okay.
Green light's on.
Yep. Okay, I got it. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, thank you for allowing me to address you tonight. This is one of the rare occasions where I'm not only addressing for myself, but also
Give you your name to the city clerk.
for my wife. My name is Nate Israelson, 1008 Andreas Palms Drive, and Jerry has given me permission. We've gone over what I'm going to say, and she said this is one time in almost 48 years that I can speak for her as well. I'm here to talk about the Animal Control Center and the fact that this is being brought up again and again and again. First of all, I feel that Palm Springs is a full-service city. And as a full-service city, animal control is one of the main things that we have to offer. We have tremendous staff at our facility. They are available basically 24/7, 365 days a year. They have outstanding expertise. Now, if we shut that down, what are we going to do if something comes up? Call a police officer off beat and have him go to handle it? And it's just something that shouldn't be done. I don't understand why Palm Springs should support the rest of the valley in this particular venture. It has come through a number of times through council. You have voted it down. You have decided to keep ours, and I don't understand why it's going on again. You know, if one valley government, which has been discussed over the years, was ruled out, one police department, one fire department, one council, one building, one planning, so on, then it's the same thing. This definitely should not. I've had personal experience with these folks at our animal control, and we get a 15 to 30-minute response time. A lot of times, it's a lot less than that. And let's face it, most of the citizens here in Palm Springs do have pets, dogs, cats, birds, and or snakes. So it's just, you know, with all due respect, I don't understand why it's constant, why we're constantly revisiting this thing. Now, I had been told that the city has some land that they were going to give to a new animal control center, and that they were going to have some drawings made of a possible facility, and then we could go out and raise some money, the same as we did with the skate park. That just seems to be in limbo, and I just don't understand it. I heard there's another suggestion of keep the animals here for 72 hours and then take them down valley. Why? To kill them? It just is something that I just can't understand it. And both Jerry, my wife, and myself were dead against joining a down valley or even shutting ours down or turning ours into 72 hours. Let's keep the great people we have. It's something, the utility tax was put on to keep city services as they were and as they are, and I think they should stay that way. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to address the council on matters on tonight's agenda? Come up, sir. Again, matters on tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Good. If you give your name to the city clerk, and welcome.
Thank you. My name is Al Stein, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and Mr. Reddy. I'm a 15-year resident of Palm Springs, and I'm here to comment on the animal issue also. Mm-hmm. I don't know the gentleman who just spoke before me, but I didn't find one thing I disagreed with that he has said. I, too, have had very good experience over these 15 years with this shelter on a personal basis as a resident. But I learned of this just yesterday of this meeting, so I hope you'll excuse me if I read from notes, which I usually don't like to do. But the real reason I'm here is as a retired financial advisor and one who has written laws that pertain throughout this state to animal control agencies. My work has taken me to a great many shelters throughout this state. And even though I'm a native Californian, I learned about parts of this state that I never knew existed. First off, I'd like to say that the shelter staff we have here, in my humble opinion, is one of the top 2 or 3, pound for pound, in this state. And in this state, there are about 100 municipal agencies and humane societies. That considered, I feel that joining the proposed Valley situation would be a very grave mistake. Essentially, you'd be going from a no-kill shelter, which is very rare in a municipality this size, to a high-kill shelter, in my estimation. And I don't think you want to anger the many Palm Springs residents when they find out why this would happen if we do join the Valley shelter. Now, I personally have attended 5 CVAG meetings regarding the new proposed shelter, and I can tell you things have not run quite smoothly. I started attending meetings in February of the year 2000. There's a mass of misinformation, I think, circulating around about this situation. And I can also tell you that not much has changed with that situation since the last meeting that you folks had here, the information meeting back in February, where you decided to build a shelter for our city, which is so greatly needed. There are really no advantages that I see to joining the proposed facility, only disadvantages and problems for Palm Springs residents. In fact, I don't understand why you would even consider going back to this issue after making the previous decision you did at this time. Now, perhaps, if you feel it's for financial reasons, I cannot visualize how joining the facility now would be financially advantageous to Palm Springs in the long run. Now, since we've only got 3 minutes to speak, I understand I'd be happy to document these views and/or work with your staff to analyze the comparative situation. Should you not, may I, just one last sentence, Mayor?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you. Should you not accept my offer, I urge you to look very carefully at the plans and protections of CVAG, as frankly, I have grave concerns about their veracity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address matters on tonight's agenda?
Excuse me.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Lori Kirshner. I'm president and founder of Desert Paws, which is a nonprofit organization, animal welfare organization here in the Valley that specifically looks after the benefit of our homeless dogs and cats in our local shelters. And I too, like the prior two gentlemen, support Palm Springs Animal Shelter and the way they function. And I'm probably gonna repeat some of the things they already said. The Valley-wide animal shelter is to be operated by Riverside County Animal Control. It's the same people who operate the Indio shelter. The Valley-wide shelter, which is in Palm Springs, the community, I think it's a misunderstanding in the community. It's not operated by Animal Samaritans. Animal Samaritans has 10 acres in Thousand Palms, and the Valley-wide animal shelter is to be built on 5 of those acres. Palm Springs Animal Shelter is by state definition, a no-kill shelter, and has been for several years. The Valley-wide Animal Shelter will be a kill shelter. Palm Springs Animal Shelter has maintained adoptions as a top priority, and for many years, their adoption rate for adoptable animals is 100% if given the opportunity. So if Palm Springs Animal Shelter is turned into a short-term holding facility, which you propose, that means after 2-3 days, dogs that are potentially adoptable are being given to a shelter that there's a good chance they're not going to be adopted and they're going to be killed or euthanized. Palm Springs Animal Shelter vaccinates all animals before they are kenneled. Riverside County Animal Shelter only vaccinates for Bordetella, which is a bacteria for kennel cough, which is curable. Consequently, they have epidemics of distemper and parvovirus which go through the shelters. Palm Springs Animal Shelter hasn't had an epidemic of distemper since they started vaccinating in 1978, and they've never had an epidemic of parvovirus. Palm Springs Animal Shelter, it has an excellent reputation. They have worked hard to achieve this reputation and maintain it. As the prior gentlemen have said, the Palm Springs Animal Shelter has submitted names for people who'd be good to work on a design committee for this new, bigger, better facility they want to create. For several months ago, they did this, but no design committee has been organized by the city. Finally, they're willing to do serious fundraising activities, and Desert Paws is willing to help them to achieve this new facility. But again, nothing has been forthcoming from the city to help them. Bottom line, the Palm Springs Animal Shelter works very hard to place animals in good homes, to keep animals in their care healthy, to locate owners so they reclaim their lost pet and provide humane education to all. They have worked hard to be a credit to the city of Palm Springs, and we don't want to see that change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council on matters within tonight's agenda? Good evening.
Hello. Thank you, council members, mayor. I am Jackie Berman. I am vice president at Desert Paws. And I want to show you what we do. As you know, we're a 501. And monthly we raise money. We have no overhead. We're all volunteers. And we raise the money. And every month spent $1,800 to put the shelter animals' pictures in the paper and get them adopted. We also have a bi-monthly TV show on KESQ. And those animals are provided by the Palm Springs Animal Shelter. We made up signs at our expense, and all the businesses put them in the window regarding the problem of animals perishing in the car because of the heat. I personally filed a complaint with Roy Wilson April 15th regarding Indio Shelter. They have refused to cooperate with our group in terms of providing dogs for the TV show, bringing dogs to our Adopt-A-Pet at our 5K marathon, which is held outside City Hall, taking pictures of the animals to get them into the paper. It took me 3 months, and finally Janice McLaughlin forced Indio Shelter to provide us with photographs of the animals, and her excuse was, it's Riverside County Animal Control, and we don't have the resources or the funds. Then I found out the pictures of the animals that we paid $1,800 to publish, with the top line letting the reader know some of the animals pictured are scheduled for euthanasia on, and we gave the date. Those dogs were euthanized before our ad broke. Additionally, Indio Shelter, and this was part of my complaint that I filed with Janice McLaughlin, additionally, they when I asked for a verification of the animals that supposedly were adopted, what I got was not audible. It wasn't valid. And basically they told me, we don't have the money, we can't afford to do this, we can't continue on, we only hold a dog 5 days and then we have to euthanize them. I really believe in my heart, if we get involved with the Valley-wide Animal Shelter, what we're doing is joining a giant slaughterhouse. They get $5 a day to feed them, they get $35 to euthanize them, and it's dogs in and dogs out. And when I asked Janice McLaughlin, are these animals adoptable that you are euthanizing, she said, yes, a lot of them are. They come in, they're turn-ins, they're pets, they're obedience trained, they're wonderful pets, but we don't have the people. Now, common sense says if our group is paying to expose those animals to the public and get them homes, and they can't even take the time to cooperate with us now, these are the very same people that are going to be running the Valley-wide shelter, the very same mentality. Additionally, the Indio Shelter is not open on Saturday, is not open on Sunday. We offered volunteers to come in to help get the animals adopted, and they said no, too much liability. They are open one night till 7 o'clock, and that's Wednesday. I have verified animals have been picked up by private owners that lost their pets, and the animals were euthanized within the 5 days, and they couldn't get their animals reclaimed. We can't be a part of this. Palm Springs Animal Shelter cooperates. They have been the only ones to provide us with a dog for our TV show bi-monthly. We have a 95% adoption rate because of the Palm Springs Animal Shelter. They're perfectionists, they're excellent, and they give Palm Springs a good name. I implore you to keep them open.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome. If you give your name to the city clerk.
Yes, it's Linda Francis, and I'm a board member of Friends of the City of Palm Springs Animal Control, and everybody has said pretty much what I already wanted to say, but there's a few other points I would like to make. First of all, several of our supporters who were here last time couldn't be here because they're on vacation, and it doesn't by any means mean that they're not still behind us for this whole thing. We still have people willing to do the fundraising, but they can't do anything until they have some drawings and architectural renderings to present to the people who are willing to do the fundraising. So those people as far as I know, are still on board, and we're just waiting. We can't do it in the summer either, obviously. But when we've got something to present to them, we will. There's no question that this valley-wide animal shelter is going to be a huge improvement for all the rest of the agencies that are involved. I mean, when you consider Desert Hot Springs and Indio and the horrors that Cathedral City goes through, this will be an improvement. And with the exception of the fact that that it's going to be a brand-new facility, there would be no advantage in my mind for Palm Springs to be part of this thing. First of all, our shelter has been run, it's the gold standard for the valley. And it's what everybody should aspire to as far as running a shelter, a no-kill as far as you can. I don't believe for a minute that that's going to happen out there. I think that the capacity is going to be not big enough to handle the total of all the shelters and all the animals that come into those shelters. I think it's going to be less. I think they're going to have a faster turnover rate. I question it being run by the county because of the reasons that the lady prior to me said. Esther and her staff, under her expertise, have run this shelter for over 24 years and have provided outstanding service to the city of Palm Springs. And the residents of this city are used to that kind of service. I don't think that they're going to be happy with anything less. And also, as a volunteer over at the shelter, I know that there's a lot of people who, at this end of the valley, either are going to be unwilling to drive that far to claim dogs or unable. We have a lot of senior citizens in this town that can't get where they need to go at that distance, and I think it's going to provide a problem distance-wise also for them to get to this facility, and I think you'll lose some of the people coming in and out that way. We are able, because of the size, the capacity of our shelter, to monitor these animals closely for illness, and we vaccinate, like she said, when they come in. We don't have outbreaks of illness because they can personally monitor because we have less animals to pay attention to, and they're quickly taken care of over here. So we don't lose a lot of animals to that kind of thing. Again, the capability of what the capacity is for this place, even Supervisor Wilson in his letter said they don't know what the kennel count's going to be yet, and they're expecting you to sign up without knowing that. Basically, that's all I had to say. I had to skip around because everybody else addressed what I was saying. But we do have a plan going on right now, and we are collecting money. Our building fund is starting to grow already, so
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Welcome.
My name is Judd Hadley, resident of Palm Springs. I would like to state my support for the project for the animal shelter. We've heard a lot of things about the Indio shelter and the problems there, and this facility is specifically being built to address those problems. No facility will ever be big enough to hold all the unwanted animals in the valley. We have to spay and neuter, that's the bottom line. And this facility will work towards that end. And it will address the adoption and the other issues of transportation that have been addressed by other groups. And I think that it's a good project, and I think the city should go forward. It is yet one more way we could possibly get rid of the utility users tax. Thank you.
I need to get clarification. When you say this project, the CVAG project, or this our project?
The CVAG project.
The CVAG project.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification, sir.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishing to address council on matters listed on tonight's agenda? Very good. Seeing none. Council, I'd like to pull item 4 forward since the crowd is here tonight and move on that as quickly as possible. I've asked Mr. Reddy to make copies of the letter that prompted this entire discussion. Mr. Reddy, if you'll hand those out to the individuals that came forward. There was a meeting held last week. Supervisor Roy Wilson holds a quarterly meeting with mayors and city managers, and at that meeting he handed out letters, much of which we're handing out here, asking for a final written determination by each member of CVAG as to their position on the animal campus. Inasmuch as the council cannot take action without it being agendized, it is on tonight's agenda simply to take a formal action one way or the other to finalize our position on the valley-wide. We did not prompt this discussion. We took action, as many of you cited in your comments, first part of this year, as to how we wanted to move forward on the animal campus. Mr. Reddy's going to give a brief report on what has changed since that point in time, and then we'll give action, and I'm sure I'll authorize a letter to be sent to Supervisor Wilson. Mr. Reddy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. As you had mentioned, Mayor, we did get this request from Mr. Wilson, and to enable to timely respond to his request, we agendized this matter for this evening. And council, what we'd like to do is just briefly reaffirm the numbers as we know them today in terms of what our shelter costs going forward and what the CVAG alternative would be. And I would like to note too, several of the speakers may mention the fact that they have not seen any movement or action on our new shelter. And I would just like to just bring them up to date that as we were into our budget process this year, and we just finished our budget process, as we know, we were looking at approximately a $4 million deficit. And that capital improvement of approximately $3 to $4 million was just not possible this year. And so what we have done is we've made approximately $50,000 worth of improvements at the current shelter for this year. Hopefully the animal shelter will be back before City Council as a capital improvement program for next year or in the near future. And with that, I would actually ask the Assistant City Manager, Troy Butzloff, and the Chief of Police, who the animal shelter is under the Police Department, to give the brief report on the numbers. Thank you.
Mr. Members of the City Council, back in February of this year, we presented this issue to you, and at that time we had done a cost analysis of the various animal control options. The sheet that we put before you tonight is very similar to that, what we did back in February. The only things that have changed is essentially, of course, the adopted budget that the council recently approved in June, which shows the animal control budget for the current fiscal year of $461,003. CVAG's numbers have slightly changed somewhat from what we originally reported, and we've also made some other adjustments to the sheet. So what I'd like to do is just kind of briefly go over and refresh the council's memory about the various options, and then either the chief or I will answer any questions you may have. Under the CVAG option, this would be where the city would take all of its animal population to the Mid-Valley or the Valley-wide animal campus. CVAG is indicating that the cost to do that would be $103,000 a year, and they're looking for a 5-year commitment. The cost could go down if the cities of La Quinta and Indio do join, so the 103 is still a flexible number. The city would still have to have its animal control officers to provide field services. The cost of those officers are $274,900 for a total cost for the CVAG option of $377,980. To construct a new shelter, we're looking at potentially a $2 to $3 million cost, potentially as much as $5 million, depending on the size and, of course, what goes into the shelter. The finance director has estimated that on a 30-year bond at 5% interest, the annual cost of the bond issuance would be about $200,000. Because it'll take several years to build a shelter, we're going to have to make some emergency repairs and improvements to the existing facility. And as the city manager indicated, we're roughly going to be spending about $40,000 on that. You'd still have your operating cost, which would be slightly higher due to the larger facility, but we'll take the estimate of $150,000 for sake of this analysis. And then, of course, you have to add your personnel costs, which total about $360,000 for a total cost of $746,553. Now, if we kept our operations at the existing shelter, we did a fairly aggressive analysis of all the things that need to be done to bring that facility up to appropriate standards. And what we're estimating is that it cost about $350,000 to make the necessary improvements, upgrades, to bring that shelter up to our standards. So that'd be a one-time expense. You had the operating cost of $150,000, personnel cost of $310,000, and your total cost first year would be $811,003. That cost would drop to $461,003 in subsequent years. The final option that we presented to council back in February is the CVAG holding facility option. This would be where the city would hold animals for a period of up to 72 hours before transporting them to the Valley-wide animal campus. And on that, we would have to have a holding facility somewhere. It could be at the existing shelter. And in this scenario, we would estimate that we'd use that. And so we'd have to make certain improvements to that facility. And so the estimated one-time expense for that would be $255,400. If we only transported a portion of our animal population to the Valley-wide campus, CVAG has indicated that our costs, which they estimated at 103 if all of our population went to them, would drop. We're estimating that the cost to take a portion of our animal population would be about $75,000 a year. You'd have additional $85,000 in operating costs for our existing holding facility or for the holding facility, and then you'd still have to have your animal control officers for a cost of $310,950 for a combined cost of $726,350. That cost would drop in the second year due to the elimination of the shelter remodel cost, and your total cost in the second year and subsequent years could be around $470,000. So those are the options that we have before us tonight. Obviously, with the supervisor's letter, we need to indicate what the city's preference would be, and the chief or myself would be happy to answer any questions you have about any of these options or the existing animal control budget.
Thank you, Troy. Council, questions? On your chart under personnel costs, the column of 4 full-time officers, all the columns that show 310,950 are consistent, but under the new shelter, you got it at 360. What's the increase of $50,000?
I raised the number of shelter attendants to 2 full-time positions instead of the 1.5 that we're currently allocated for. I felt that a bigger facility would probably necessitate more staffing, so I raised that accordingly. So that's where the additional increase in funds is accounted for.
Thank you. Other council questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Oden.
first of all, thank you for the clarification of how and why this issue is before us again. And I think whenever we have an opportunity to work in a cooperative fashion with other cities, we should do so. However, in this particular situation, with all the studies and things that we have conducted, we see that we set the standard. And our citizens are accustomed to that. I think one of the first questions I think that's important for us to ask ourselves is whether or not we wish to continue being a full-service city. And certainly I would like to see that continue. So I support us building eventually our new shelter for the animals within our communities, and that we maintain the standards that we have set, which means a no-kill facility, and that our employees that others have contacted to see how to run a facility properly, that we maintain them as well, because that's part of the standard that we have. So even though I really try to support as many efforts that are cooperative as possible, this is not one. So I will, I wish to maintain our direction as we had in the past.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Spurgeon.
I don't remember this as being a money issue. I remember it being an issue of what our community wanted. They had done the studies and they didn't want to have to go out of town to be able to retrieve their lost pet. And that's what it's about. I certainly consider myself fiscally responsible, but I believe in this case we're doing what our constituents have asked. So I, too, will not support it to go valley-wide.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mills.
I think, as Mr. Oden and Mrs. Varela-Spurgeon stated, we talked about this before. I really don't see anything that's changed. And in fact, if we getting a little more information, I think than we got last time on the numbers, if you look from column 1 over to column 5, the difference is virtually the same, although I would think the holding facility would have a lower operating costs to maybe to the tune of the 50 that you bumped it. It might up for the one, it might go down the 50 to the other. But even still, it's I think it's a level of service that we're after here, and that we've had, and that we want to continue to have. And I think the vote last time would hold. And with that, I will move council direction as previously stated.
And I'll second that.
And that previous direction is to write a letter confirming that we will not be joining the CVAG endeavor, and we'll be building our own, maintaining our own, and hopefully building our own in the future.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Again, as comments were made earlier by other members, this was not an issue based on simply a budget concern or budget restraint. This was based on a quality of life issue. Sometimes the quality of life that we demand as citizens of Palm Springs comes with a higher price tag. We have had these discussions ongoingly for a number of years, and I think the councils remain relatively consistent. Although, as Mr. Oden said, always open to new ideas, welcome the idea of a regional approach. But it has not secured the confidence of the council in the past, and as apparently by tonight's action, probably will not carry tonight either. So with that, I'll ask for a roll call from Madam Clerk with a letter to be sent to Supervisor Wilson indicating that we will not be joining the Valley-wide Animal Campus and will continue to maintain our own facility. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Oden?
Aye.
Mr. Relish-Pershing?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor?
Aye, 4-0, deemed unanimous. Now we'll turn back to the agenda as properly sequenced. We'll turn to our Visitors Information Center. First item before us, Mr. Reddy, your staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have before you to approve the plans and specifications and working details for the bids for the Visitor Center. And with that, I would turn to Mr. Smoot, who is the director, actually the program manager for this project. And he's also brought Doug Evans, who also has some comments from the planning side. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Over the last several days, the Visitor Center has visited several commissions, and so Doug is going to give you a quick rundown on what happened at the various levels of review, and then we'll run through the plans with you. Doug?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The plans that are up on the wall and the ones that are leaning against the wall have had a busy week. Design Review reviewed the plans and recommended approval on Monday. The Historic Site Preservation Board reviewed the plans yesterday morning and recommended approval of the project. And the Planning Commission reviewed the plans this afternoon and recommended approval of the project. The Planning Commission did have 3 recommendations. One has to do with reducing the lighting adjacent to the glass wall panel. That actually came up at Design Review also. 2, that sometime in the future the city needs to look at a full parking lot lighting program. The Commission recognized the budget constraints, but felt eventually the parking lot should have full lighting. 3, that the vending machines be non-illuminated and have minimal advertising due to the location. The feeling was as if the vending machines are lighted, you would be able to see the lights of the vending machines through the frosted glass screen panel, and at night we wouldn't want to look at advertising at the Palm Springs Visitor Center. One concern did come up, but it wasn't part of the commission motion, had to do with just using the glass. One of our planning commissioners has had quite a bit of experience in maintaining many facilities that have lots of glass, and he was concerned about vandalism and just the use of that material. And with that, that's the conclusion of the recommendations. We've been working with the project architects on the changes relative to this, as well as plan checking the plans. If the council has any questions, we can certainly answer them.
Touch that thing, it'll blow up. The team has been working very hard since you last saw us. The architects have really done a fantastic job of paring the project back based upon the council's previous direction and reduction in the budget. The plan that we have, I'll go to the wall and show you a couple of things about it, and then we'll try to answer any questions. This top drawing basically shows the plot plan, and the project's really broken down into 3 or 4 pieces. First piece dealing with the building itself, that being the Albert Freight gas station. There is nothing being done to the exterior of that building, with the exception of a small sidewalk being put around the outside of the building. The interior of the structure is being put together with partitions and desks and those kinds of things to where it can operate as a visitor center, and that is the extent at which the building is being modified, totally on the inside. The exterior wall that's currently there now is 7 feet tall, and that particular wall is being proposed to be cut down to 3 feet from the interior elevation of the property that's there, so that as you come into town, you'll actually be able to see the building, not just that big tall wall and the grass that's growing out there. The major piece of the project, the most expensive part, is the restroom facility that has been moved from back in this location to over in this location, to where as folks park their cars and come towards the visitor center, they'll be walking right by, as Doug pointed out to the commission today, the first place they really want to go, and then on to the visitor center. The structure is a prefabricated metal restroom facility that has been designed in such a fashion that there will be a wall, that glass wall that Doug was talking about, all the way across the front of it. They'll have the small sign on it that talks about the visitor center, and will actually lead the folks towards the visitor center itself. And then lastly, the parking facility that has had some changes since you last saw it. When you first saw it, it was long and rectilinear, stuck in this location. Part of your project team's effort was to go out there and figure out how to save money. If we did it in that direction, we would have to haul off one heck of a lot of boulders and dirt. So we've reworked it to where it's spread in the other direction, and we'll work over the top of the existing grade that's there. This is a temporary parking. It will be asphalt over the top of some minimal base that we bring in there. The landscaping in the parking lot is sparse to non-existent because of the budget that is there at the current time. The lighting that will be there is we're taking 4 existing lighting fixtures that are in the front of the building now and relocating them along the side, so there will not be a full lighting system in there. The landscaping itself that we're going to be doing is very minimal, again, on the inside, with some along the outside of the wall. That pampas grass or whatever it is that's out there now will be taken down. That's pretty much the project. The architects are here and they could answer your questions in more specificity of what's going on inside of the building. At this point, our schedule is such that the building department has completed its plan check. The building plans are being corrected at this point, and our anticipation is that with your approval, we will go to bid on the 21st, actually receive bids on the 12th of August, ask you to come back for a 5-minute council meeting on the 13th of August so we can award the contract and start this project around the 1st of September so we can complete by the middle part of October. We'd be happy to try to answer your questions.
Thank you. Council questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mills?
I understand that you're reusing the 4 parking lot fixtures, and when you say it's not lit, by lit you mean not to city standards? I mean, is the walk path, from the parking lot itself proper along the walk in front of the toilets and into the building, is that lit?
That will be well lit.
Okay, all right. A good retailer, because that is where everybody's going first, would have put those toilets on the other side, right? But anyway, the other question is, would someone explain the disposition of the I hate to call it an agreement at this, but what we were setting up with DWA as far as the landscaping? Because I thought that was still on board, maybe just a little bit behind the project.
It's still being worked, but I don't know what the update is at this point.
Kurt Watts, Community and Economic Development Department. We are still in discussions with DWA. There's quite a bit of information that they've asked of us in terms of both this project and citywide projects that they might have some participation in, that they'd like to take kind of a global look at things before deciding on this. And some of it is also related to the permanent nature of any improvements that they might make. So some of the design issues that are at hand here might impact their decision in terms of awarding the monies to participate with us.
Okay, I think I know what you said, Kurt.
Well, they're basically looking at such things as the land upon which any of their improvements or dollars would be put onto, say, for example, the parking lot, if it's temporary in nature, would any of their money go into landscaping there? They might be less likely to fund that,
Okay.
knowing it's temporary. They also want more detail about the land lease with the Nichols family in terms of what level of permanency there might be on any improvements that they fund.
And maybe you're not the one that asked this to, Kurt, but if I understand what Mr. Smoot presented, we're being asked to approve a landscape plan here, is that right? But the landscape plan may not be the landscape plan?
Well, the majority of work that DWA would probably fund would be that area between the northern exterior wall toward the entryway sign, okay? They may fund some things around the interior perimeter of the visitor center building, but we're kind of in a chicken or egg situation where until they are more actively involved in either designing and or determining if they wish to put funding into the project, we can't do a more elaborate landscaping plan. So I believe what the architects have tried to do in this project is do minimal landscaping on the inside. That could be enhanced through future monies from DWA, but it's hard to know how far their money might stretch both between the interior of the site and that area between the building and the entryway sign.
Okay, well, okay, fine. Now I understand, Kurt, thanks. Thanks for the update.
Other questions? Doug, your comments earlier on indicated a concern about the glass and vandalism. Did the Planning Commission discuss any alternate material that has more durability?
I think they like the design, you know, from the standpoint of the image, the night, you know, and kind of the mystery of what's behind that glass panel, and it's the restroom. But I think they like the design. We did talk to the architect a little bit about alternatives. All the alternatives that would give you pretty much that same feel are going to be subject to scratching, etching, things of that nature. You could go to a Lexan, and you probably wouldn't have a breakage concern, but a Lexan's probably not going to weather as well and certainly still can be scratched. They did talk about different types of glass, you know, as far as, you know, maybe a wire glass from a safety standpoint, different types of glass. The architect's position was that this is probably the best alternative, short of really trying to redesign it completely. The architects are here. They responded to the Commission's concern on that issue today, and the Commission didn't make the recommendation to change the material. They just noted the concern, and there's really one commissioner with an expertise in maintenance of buildings.
Yeah, it's a safe statement. Can we have a little discussion as to what that glass material is, how thick it is, the cost of replacement, its durability against vandalism? Some idea what that material is. Glass is sort of a generic statement. What exactly is it? How easy is it broken? And then once it is broken, what's the cost to replace it?
My name is Ana Escalante, and I'm one of the architects who designed the stuff that you're looking at. Essentially, the glass is a half-inch tempered glass, and it can withstand. It's almost like what you see in a windshield of a vehicle. If it shatters due to impact, it's not going to kill anybody. It's per code, and the alternative to that will be to use wire glass, but essentially the only difference between using the wire glass and using the tempered glass is that the tempered glass would, I mean, a bullet can penetrate it, but it can be sandblasted again. I mean, it's pretty easy to maintain. We have used it before in some other projects. Sometimes we have used laminated glass, but due to the span, which is 5 feet 6 inches, it just performs better when we did our analysis. And we felt that it was very appropriate to, you know, to sort of recall Palm Springs architecture.
Is it transparent, translucent?
Translucent. It will be sandblasted on one side.
Is it tinted?
No, it doesn't need to be tinted.
It's just a clear glass.
Yeah, it would look milky, essentially like the rendering
Yeah.
that you're looking at. That's pretty realistic.
What's the cost of replacing the glass?
That's a question that I would like to refer to Lance, because I do believe that in about $500, between $250 to $500 per panel, I would assume. But Lance, if you want to come over and expand on that.
Good evening.
Good evening. Name's Lance O'Donnell. I'm one of the other architects working on the stuff on the wall. The panels themselves, because of the nature of their size, 5'6" by 9 foot high or 8'6" high, they're a little more expensive than I think Anna's estimation. So we're talking probably $750 to $1,000 per panel if it
Installed.
needs to be replaced. Yeah. We were told by the experts that we talked to several local glass suppliers, and their recommendation was for a half-inch tempered because in their experience, rocks and other things tend to bounce off of that type of glass. Obviously, a car or a bullet or something will go through it, and it will shatter into small little pieces. The other option was 2 layers of 1/4-inch glass with a lamination between them. That was seen as a good alternative for something that's going to hold together once it's broken, but it's much easier to break a 1/4-inch piece of glass than it is to break a half-inch piece of glass. The other option we could pursue would be to make smaller modules, so if one module of the glass was broken, the replacement cost would be less. However, as Anna was saying, in keeping with the design and the modulation of the panels, it works out throughout the structure of the toilet room facility. So at this point, we don't want to change the module because it's working with the concept and the design. But if deemed necessary, we could probably change the module.
I just want to go with eyes open on the cost of replacing the glass. And it's not tinted, it's not a custom piece, so it's not hard to duplicate. It's just clear glass.
Clear glass.
Half-inch, and you're going to sandblast it.
Sandblast it.
Fully controllable. Okay, because it is, from my standpoint, it could be deemed in the world of vandals a target. And once they find out how much excitement could be derived from that, it may be a repetition we don't want to deal with.
Is the area secured?
No,
No, it's right off the entry drive.
it's part of the wall that confines the property.
If there were gates installed at the entry drive at night, simple closing gates, then at least vehicles couldn't get up close to it. But that's not in the budget at the moment.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mills?
I would think that the choice of the half-inch tempered glass is by far the best choice for the use. And I mean, I don't think it's going to break. I think it's going to get scratched if something's going to happen to it. Somebody's going to key it or something. And that's the type of thing that I think is going to happen from a vandalism standpoint, not breakage. That's pretty strong stuff at that size. So, you can have that happen anywhere, as several retailers in the downtown will attest to. So, it's part of the game.
Well, it certainly looks nice. With what you just said, Chris, we as a community have taken great pride in when there's graffiti or something, we're right there to clean it up. But because we know the ramifications of what that image portrays, and certainly a visitor center, we would want to portray an image of safe, a nice place to come, stay, potentially move. So if it's scratched, I think that says something too. That's a concern.
Well, we can also etch both sides so that if there was scratching on either face, that they would be scratching an etched side or a sandblasted side. And then to remove the scratches, it would just be a matter of re-etching. which is very doable with a half-inch piece of glass.
Good idea.
I think I like that idea.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mills.
I like a question, or really more a comment on the landscaping. I certainly hope, well, no, I mean, I'm very confident that there will be something worked out with DWA on this. I mean, we're looking at a landscape plan that is extremely sparse here, to the point of I don't want to approve it, the landscape plan, because I am confident that we will, as I mentioned, we will work out something with DWA, and we'll be able to landscape it properly. And I don't want to see a break in the concept of the landscaping from the sign to the visitor center. It should appear as one, and it should read as one from the street. But I think with what's being shown here, that it will dictate more of what the rest of its site is going to be, and I'm not really sure that that's the envisioned look that I would see ultimately from that, for that linkage, nor is it what I think DWA is looking in terms of to cover what their point is. So, I mean, we're looking at, you know, one tree on the entire thing there, and I just don't really want to get involved in approving a landscape plan as sparse as that. I'd rather not have it, and hope that we can do something with DWA, and if we can't, then readdress it. So.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Hoden.
Well, I like the design. I think it's very much in keeping and supportive of the existing structure, so I like that. And I also agree with Mr. Mills here. I'm very understanding of what DWA wants to do, and they're looking at all the things that they are contributing to the city, and, you know, their rationale makes sense. But if it's not what we want at this time, then I'm comfortable pulling it out and moving forward with this project. And with that, I'll move the minute order
Second.
with the exclusion or the removal of the landscape plan.
Double-edged glass.
Double-edged.
And the double-edged glass.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
And Anna.
Art pen.
Great stuff, by the way. Item 2, Foundation of the Retarded Waiver of Fees. Mr. Reddy, a staff report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The director of the Foundation of the Retarded had requested of the city to waive the fees for security. Actually, the request was for 4 police officers for their all-star game benefiting the foundation. It's a charitable event at the high school. I'd indicated to him I did not have the ability to waive the fees. It would take a council action. I indicated to the gentleman that it was not a budgeted request. It would have to come from fund balance or from the police department budget. Was not budgeted. In essence, it would be a charitable donation. So it's before you. Indicated it's not a budgeted item. It's before you for your consideration. The police department had indicated 4 is the number. Whether you want to do the full amount, half, whatever percentage, it's for your discussion and decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Council?
Had we not talked about, Mr. Mayor, if I may,
By all means.
had we not talked about a precedence of time as far as sponsoring events? And I mean, today's Wednesday and this is Saturday. I think we talked about 6 months.
You raise a very good point, Council Member Jeannie Reller Spurgeon.
You can
Actually,
still call me Jeannie, yeah.
Thank you. Actually, on the docket agenda review this evening, you will see the special events ordinance, or the special events process, and we need to get that agendized. But again, this is a case where an organization brings a request to us relatively soon before their event and asked us to make a decision, and it creates a problem for both the organization and, of course, for council. So that kind of process would be a very important process.
Is the foundation for the retarded still on Vela Road?
No, it's in,
I believe not.
They moved, didn't they?
it's in Palm Desert. It's on Country Club, just on the other side of Monterey.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Councilman Ron.
What is it?
We're going to get party hats and everything. It's going to be fun. It's the new council.
I do. I do understand that this has come to us at the last minute, but obviously there is a significant need, and this organization services a lot of people in our community, and I'll move them in order.
Motion for approval by Mr. Oden. Is there a second?
So moved.
Second for further discussion. Mr. Mills, do you have any questions or comments, sir? I won't call you Councilman Christie, don't worry.
Okay.
I'm gonna let it go. I don't want to beat it up.
The only comment would be
Christie with a W.
I mean, I understand the need for four, and that's what the police department feels as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there a possibility that the reserves or the volunteers could fill a portion of that?
Councilmember Mills, I would ask the Chief of Police to address that question, please. Chief?
There's an inherent problem with having the reserves get involved in contract services such as this, and it would probably have association, union ramifications, and it's also outside really the scope of what the reserves generally do. They generally would. What has happened in the years past is that it became an issue of people saying, "I'll take 2 police officers, and can I get the 2 free police officers?" And it became a procedure that the volunteers were saying, you know, we don't want to do contract overtime and get involved in being free for other organizations. We want to come in and do stuff for the police officers. So it's been our practice that the reserves don't participate in contract overtime such as this.
Okay. Other questions for the chief? Chief, events happen in Palm Springs where you don't have a Palm Springs police presence at the event. What's prompting the need to have 4 officers here for 4 hours?
I believe that it's the high school events and the possibility of different schools and adolescent-type behaviors that occur at these type of gatherings, and the safety aspect of fights
Okay.
breaking out and those kind of things.
In as much as it's on school property?
Yes.
Don't schools inherently have to provide security for their own property or contract with us? Why
The
not
high
just-
school does for their high school events. They contract with us. But I don't know if this is anything to do with the school. I think this is. I don't believe that it's a school
Actually,
problem.
if I could clarify, these officers, I believe, will be there, will be working as part of the requirement. The foundation will have to pay if we don't allow them to have that at our expense. The issue is they just didn't have the ability to pay,
Right.
and they'll have to find it. So I guess under the school requirements to have security, they will be there. So you're right, Mayor, they do have a requirement to have security.
But they're not paying for it.
But they are required to pay for it. It is their responsibility. They're just asking us for the assistance.
Mr. Mayor,
Israel Spurgeon.
is there an entrance fee?
Yes.
Yes, so people are being charged to go in.
It's a fundraiser.
I understand. And we have a budget.
Yeah.
And I realize it's $880, but it's $880 for this, and then it's $50,000 for that, and then it's $60,000 for that, and, you know, pretty soon it starts to add up, and when do you say no?
I'll segue off that comment. this is not a reflection on this organization or the work they do, because there are hundreds of organizations that do incredible work throughout the valley. And each of them have needs to raise money and do fundraising events, and some do and some don't require security, and some do and do not require security at the level of a uniformed law enforcement personnel. But when you elevate to that kind of a level, it comes with an inherent cost. Jeannie alludes to the fact that we have established a budget, and in that budget, we don't have monies set aside for organizations to come to and request in-kind services or donations of services. It's not budgeted. So we've got to draw this out of some other fund. It's not as though we can shift something. And you can't take your personnel off their assigned task, then you deplete the level of services that the citizens expect. And I have a concern about the lateness of request, and then the allowing it to happen with this event and this organization, because then the line forms as to when my event comes under the precedent that was set on that night of July 9th, why am I not permitted? What was the selective reason why one was given and one wasn't? And that's the challenge, I think, of any leadership, is to remain consistent. I mean, if it's just come see if we're in a good mood or a bad mood that night, I don't think that's the way you want to govern. I think you got to remain somewhat consistent. And the concern I have is granting this waiver to anyone without some sort of a pre-established budget, an allotment, or a policy that permits it to happen, because none of that is in place right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Oden.
I certainly understand the importance of making sure that we handle things in a timely fashion, but over the years, we look at the number of organizations that come to us, whether it's with CDBG funding or with general requests. This is rare from this organization, and they are in our community on a daily basis helping our residents. And I think that this single opportunity to, in good faith, say we appreciate what you do, even though it's not timely, and I think they understand that, and we're saying that. It doesn't matter to me if we do this for this one. Each situation, I think, stands on its own, especially for the organizations within our community who know this. So that's why I'm comfortable supporting it.
Very good. Additional comments?
Mr. Mayor, is there a representative from the event? Yes. Mr. White? Yes, sir. That we could hear.
Come forward, introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Dick White, event coordinator.
Is that microphone on, Mr. White? Is the green light on?
Yes, it's on.
All right, good. You have questions for him, sir?
Well, Dick, you've heard the comments, and I just was wondering if you had anything to add to what you've heard. So
I appreciate everything that you said, and you're right, and we know that about being late. We thought that was part of the package that went with the rental from the high school. I didn't know that it was a separate situation with that, and I didn't find out about that until about 3 weeks ago or so when I called David's office, and actually I talked to the chief first and found out what the situation was. I thought that was part of the package we were getting from the high school, because I know that's all part of their game package, and it wasn't until then that I knew that it was a separate situation, and that's when we obviously try to get to happen.
So you're renting the stadium from the high school?
Yes, we've got, they're actually waiving most of their fees to us. It's just the things that are directly like lining the field and something like that.
That you are paying for that?
Yeah, we're paying for that part, but they've been very cooperative and everything to us, as has the city. You have been with us with the softball and baseball game over at the stadium. We certainly appreciate that. And as far as the funds that will be raised, I will be happy if we break even at this point. We've got 200 kids coming in from 24 different high schools. We've got,
and that's what it's about, Hunter.
That's what it's all about. It's about the kids coming in to play, and it's about helping the people at the foundation. Those are the two key things. We've got almost 95 kids from the 7 Coachella Valley schools playing in the 5 games.
Kind of unrelated, if I may.
Sure.
Why'd the foundation move out of Palm Springs?
All they had here was a printing operation, and it became not cost efficient. They were losing business, so they moved it in-house into part of their full operation over in Palm Desert. They never had their major offices or anything here. It was just the small printing operation.
Thanks.
Okay, other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Okay, motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor of waiving the fee, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
2-2. That dies due to a tie. So in order to waive all of it, it is deadlocked. If you wanted to make an alternate motion, we can look at a second motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mills.
motion to waive half the fees, the 440.
Motion from Mr. Mills to waive half the fees. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second for 440.
Sounds like an auction. Mr. Reddy, where are you going to get the money?
Actually, members of council, the overtime budget in the police department is a pot, and it will be paid out of that pot. And as we move through the year, of course, that our hope is that we manage that pot, that we have plenty to cover. I anticipate that 440 is an amount that we would be able to cover as we move through the year.
You know, I could say something to that comment, but I'm not going to because we're on public TV. That's bad.
Okay.
As a caveat, the last couple of years, council would be happy to know that actually we have reduced our overtime because we have begun to budget overtime in a manner that is very realistic, that meets the needs of their actual overtime costs. So I believe if it came out of the overtime budget at this level, it wouldn't make or break the city, I don't believe.
Okay.
People are losing their jobs.
I'm going to call the police chief back up for a second. Chief Ginman. Gary, some time back, council worked with your department to construct the 3 and 12.5 hour shift. Is that gone?
Yes.
We had 37.5 hours with a pool of 2.5 hours per shift could have set aside. Where are those hours, and can we use those?
I'm not sure what hours you're talking about we had set aside.
We had three days at 12.5 hours, 37.5 hours, but we paid 40. So there were 2.5 hours that were collected for each particular individual.
The 10-hour payback that you're talking about?
I'm looking for maybe someone who understands
Yeah.
this. Is Mr. Kennard here?
That's
The pool of hours that were set aside at that time.
it was
They
we used it. They would come back and we would require the officer to come back at 10 hours.
So do we have any residual hours left over? No. No, there you go. So we're not on the 3, 12.5 anymore. We're back to
No, we're not at the 312.5. We didn't have the staff to.
Thomas' powerful presentation.
We didn't have the staff to cover the 12.5, so we went back on the 410.
Okay.
But there was no money left over. The 10 hours would require the officer to come back and work, so we didn't pool any hours. So if you had 10 hours, you were required to come back in and put 10 hours, or I would take it away from you in comp time or some general leave.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Any other questions, comments? The motion on the floor is to split this 50-50, 440 each. Motion by Mr. Mills and second by Mr. Oden. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Split 2-2. Again, stalled.
Try 220, 210? No, I'm kidding.
My concern is based on principle and precedent. That's all mine is.
As is mine.
Anything else the council wants to address on this issue?
I just want, Dick, I want you to know, this is not about
Right.
you, this is not about the foundation. It isn't. It's about, as Will said.
Principals and president.
Appreciate your consideration.
Yes, sir. Anything else on this issue, council? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, the clerk needs to make a notation to you.
The clerk?
The clerk is volunteering me to make an announcement.
Yes.
Your rules of procedure provide that when there is a 2-2 tie vote, the matter comes back on your next agenda to see whether potentially there's a different action that would occur.
But that would be after the event, would it
Right.
not?
It's just
But that could be remembered. Okay,
procedural.
that's fine, bring it back.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. The ballot one. All right, let's go to item 3, the 2003 special immunity election ballot measure.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this comes back to us from last week, and I would turn to the city attorney to bring us back up to date on the issue. Thank you.
We gave you a report on this last week, so I won't go back over it. The simple issue was we need to determine whether the council wants to submit the ballot argument on this measure. You have the ability of either taking the pro or the con position, and if you choose, the council chooses to authorize the filing of an argument, you have precedence over any other persons who might file an argument. And I believe at the last meeting, the council felt they wanted to potentially talk to some persons in the community before deciding which way to go on this.
Okay. Mr. Reddy, I believe you had a meeting with some of the hoteliers yesterday. Could you report out, please?
Sure. Assistant City Manager Troy Bootsloff and myself, we did have lunch with the hoteliers groups, and I would like to report out that they were fine with the City Council being the authors of the ballot language. They had indicated to us of some of the issues that they had, and they would be happy to, for council to mention them and to support the council's language as you see fit.
Very good. All right, council, simple enough action. We struck a phrase, a line. Is this representative of that change? I don't have my original copy. We struck a line out of the language. You get the one I gave you? Is that still here? No?
Yeah, that's out because it was just that, yeah.
And we have the
It's right
increase in
here.
the tax rate by 1 percentage point.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So 3C, it's correct?
Yes.
The phrase that was stricken. The phrase that was stricken was regarding to go into the general fund to cover general fund expenditures.
Okay.
That was the phrase that was stricken.
Okay, again, I gave my copy to staff to work with, so I don't have that, just to make sure that's the correct language. Okay, and the council will be the authors, and the councils will be signing. Apparently, based on the clerk and the city attorney's determination, we both can't sign on it by our own action. We could submit an argument, and then she determines who the best one would be. So if we stand alone, then, and if we'd like to, we can cite the hotels that support it, if we want to use part of our word count for that purpose, and that's based on the final wording. Okay? Clear enough? Council okay with the language? And we will author this, and we will all be signatures.
Perfect.
I'll ask for a motion to that effect.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Oden, second by Ms. Rella Spurgeon.
Mr.
Any
Mayor, this
additional
is for
comments?
both, this is for both resolutions, just as clarification for the record.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Thank you.
This is for the language and the file of written arguments, is that correct?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 4-0 deemed unanimous. With that, we can adjourn from the special meeting. And before we convene the study session agenda, we'll take a quick recess. Okay. Call the meeting back to order. We'll go into our study session. You want a roll call on this? I'll turn to our city attorney, Mr. David Alshire, for an announcement on closed session items. Mr. Alshire.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Where did it go?
You want to use mine?
Oh, it's down here. Yes, the council and agents met in closed session. For the agency, real property negotiations on Plaza Theater, we gave status report, no action was taken. Real property negotiations involving the Walter Family Partnership and the Prairie Schooner parcel with the Agua Caliente band. We gave status reports on each of those items. No action was taken. Concerning, for the city, real property negotiations with Desert Water Agency, we gave a status report. No action was taken. Real property negotiations involving the Nichols Family Trust concerning the Visitor Center property, we gave a status report. No action was taken. The item involving BLM and the Tramview Road, the item was not discussed. Concerning exposure litigation, we discussed one matter, gave a status report. Initiation of litigation, we did not discuss. And the labor negotiations with general unit, we gave a status report. No action was taken.
Thank you, Mr. Alshire. Any public comments on matters within the jurisdiction?
Is it me? That's you.
I think you're a public comment. If I've ever seen a public comment personified, Ed, it's got to be you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor.
There's your own private microphone, sir.
Councilpersons, there we go. If we could, please. Am I overloading the mic? Is it in?
Yeah, you're amping up.
That's it, all right. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight and talk about the Quimby Act. Given each of you, oh, by the way, Ed Kibbe representing the Building Industry Association Desert Chapter. Given each of you a letter I wrote to staff concerning the draft ordinance, which was shared with me about a week ago. My comments, therefore, will deal only with the overview presented to you by staff for this evening's meeting. And please let me take a moment to compliment the assistance of the staff in this matter. We work closely together, and I certainly appreciate Doug and his staff working with me. Beginning with Section 1, staff estimates the city has approximately 152 acres of parks at the present time. I had found it hard to believe the city didn't know exactly how many acres, but Doug says now that 152 is a solid figure. The report states the ordinance includes a park ratio of 5 acres per 1,000 population, and this is permissible by the Quimby Act. So says the report. The statement is in error. I'll quote from the Act, subparagraph B, fourth sentence, which says, quote, however, the dedication of land or the payment of fees or both shall not exceed the proportionate amount necessary to provide 3 acres of park area per 1,000 persons residing within a subdivision subject to this section, unless the amount of existing neighborhood and community park area as calculated pursuant to this subdivision exceeds that limit, in which case the legislative body may adopt the calculated amount as a higher standard, not to exceed 5 acres per 1,000 persons residing within a subdivision subject to this section, unquote. That means that you may only exact 3.5 acres under the Quimby Act, and this according to staff figures. Section 2B, the Quimby Act does not allow occupancy factor by housing type. I quote from the same paragraph in the Act, second sentence, quote, the amount of land dedicated or fees paid shall be based upon the residential density, which shall be determined on the basis of the approved or conditionally approved tentative map or parcel map and the average number of persons per household. There shall be a rebuttable presumption that the average number of persons per household by units in a structure is the same as that disclosed by the most recent available federal census. Section 3B, third bullet, although there has been a 1998 Attorney General opinion that Quimby fees can be used for most anything recreational or cultural, community pools, community centers, so on, to make these costs part of the fee would come under the Nolan-Dolan restrictions of rough proportionality, the proportional impact the project will have on existing facilities. In order to make the cost of this type of facility a part of any fee, the city must conduct a needs analysis and nexus study. When the results of such studies show that new residents are only responsible for a portion of such facility, the city must show where the rest of the money will come from and then make sure it's available at construction time. In addition, the city must develop a list of structures, parks to be developed utilizing the money and a schedule specifying how, when, and where it will use the land fees. I would request permission to continue through this statement.
We might just make you a part of the presentation because
think
you're,
so.
you're a BIA.
I would appreciate that. Thank you
So
very much.
well, let's just do this, though, before
Yes,
you
sir.
do all that. We're not ready to go into Quimby, so we'll set you aside, you don't have to move yet, and ask if anyone else wishes to make public comments on matters. And we'll have Joy come. Now we gotta set you aside, Ed. And then you can do all your Quimby talk again. How's that? And by the way, the chief loves the word Quimby, if you want to just sit over there and whisper in his ear. Quimby. I love that word, Quimby.
Good evening. My name is Joy Meredith. I've owned Crystal Fantasy in beautiful downtown Palm Springs since 1987. I'm also the president of Main Street, the Merchants Association of Downtown Palm Springs. And I see that tonight you're going to be talking about a summer parking schedule, and I'm just going to be really brief on this. You know, I think that there's a real attitude change that really needs to come about parking. And the attitude is that the merchants downtown, the employees, the customers, the city staff need to stop thinking of the parking restrictions as being some sort of punishment. We do this because we want to save room for our customers. And for us to change the parking regulations as they stand right now, kind of haphazardly, makes me a little uncomfortable and nervous. We're really trying to prepare for a whole new parking idea that will be coming along soon. And I just wanted to say that I know that the knee-jerk reaction does seem like merchants like myself would love to have the parking restrictions thrown out for the summertime so that I could park right in front of my store and have the best spot. And that is my reaction in my heart, but I know that it's the wrong one. So I just want to point out that I know we all want that. It's just not the right thing for downtown. So Jerry has a presentation for you on this, I know, and I just wanted to let you know that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joy. Anyone else have comments? Very good. Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Due to council comments, questions, or reports, I just want to state publicly that today the Sunline JPA board met in a special session. It was a closed session dealing with the issues that are before Sunline, dealing with the audit, and we did a personnel review of certain personnel matters, and the unanimous decision of the JPA was to place Dick Cromwell, the executive general manager, and Bill Mayer, the CFO, on paid administrative leave while we continue our investigation on the matters. We have also placed a oversight committee of 4 members of the board: Dick Kelly from Palm Desert, Don Adolph from La Quinta, chair and vice chair respectively. Percy Bird from Indian Wells and myself will serve as the oversight committee, and we'll be working closely with the current staff at Sunline and hopefully the board, trying to expedite the resolution of the matters before us. And as the interim general manager, we have Dennis Gilman, who is a longstanding member of the Sunline team, is accepted the task of acting as the general manager while we go through these difficult and trying times. So I thought I'd announce that. It'll probably be in the paper tomorrow. It may, in fact, be on the news tonight. There's members of the press in the audience, so I'm sure they've got coverage or copying this down, but I thought the citizens of Palm Springs should know of that action that happened today from 3 to 5:30 tonight. Okay? Other council questions, reports, or comments? Let's go to city manager comments and follow-up reports.
Mr. Mayor, I think we're ready to move into the agenda.
Very good. Then we'll go back to our city council study session in our Quimby Act ordinance. First, we'll give it to Mr. Evans, and Ed, you want to come join us up here and
Thank you very much.
be a part of this presentation. Mr. Evans, you want to start us off? You know, Mike is just hot if you touch it. I don't know what that is.
Well, anytime you follow Mr. Kibbe, you know that he's lit up the microphone. It's hard to follow a man with a real voice.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, we're going to give you an overview of what I'd call kind of the guts and mechanics of the Quimby ordinance, the Parkland Indemnification Fee ordinance that we put together for the City Council's review. We've given you a fair amount of background material. We gave you a working copy of the staff report for the July 16th meeting. I'm not going to go through those issues. We've given you a briefing of what the Quimby Act is. What we'd really like to do today is go through what are the kind of the decision-making factors that the council needs to make. And what we've done is we put together a handout And I believe the council has copies. It looks like this. And towards the bottom of each page, we have in bold a comment that says City Council direction in order for us to finish the ordinance for next week so it could be available for your consideration. We're going to need the City Council to give us direction on those items. If not, we'll certainly prepare an ordinance that has options in it. And then at the public hearing on the 16th, you can give us directions, and we'll come back and edit those for the second reading. From the standpoint of what may be before you on the 16th, what we've proposed to do is give you two options on the proposed ordinance. One would be an urgency ordinance. If the council were to adopt it, it would go into effect immediately. I can tell you that we're getting subdivision applications almost weekly. So anytime we receive a subdivision map or a residential development, once that application is filed with the city, we could not impose these fees upon that map. So every week that goes by, in theory, there's a funding opportunity lost. By adopting an urgency ordinance, it would go into effect while the other ordinance, which is the second option we're going to put forth to the City Council, and that would be to adopt the actual ordinance. That would be for first reading. If the council so does, that could come back on July 30th for second reading, and then would go into effect 30 days thereafter. So the urgency ordinance would only have to be in effect while the ordinance that you adopt the same night is going into place. We thought that that would be an option for the City Council. Urgency ordinance requires a 4/5 vote of the City Council, so if you don't have 4 votes on that, there's no way to adopt and implement an urgency ordinance. From the standpoint of what we'd like to do today, what I've done is I've taken the worksheet that you have in front of you. I've put that up on the bulletin board so we can kind of walk through it. And what I'd like to do is just walk through it. I'm not going to go through all of the information, but I'm going to give you a couple of points. Obviously, the first point that Mr. Kibbe has brought up is the question of could the city go up to 5 acres per 1,000 in population? We've been debating that with the city attorney's office. We'll take Mr. Kibbe's comments very seriously. We'll take a look at that. And while we indicated we would like the council to tell us, would you prefer to go with 5 acres per 1,000, 4 per 1,000, or 3.5 per 1,000? Unless the city attorney has a strong feeling, we'll probably have to defer that until next week. The staff recommendation is, if we can, that we go to 5 per 1,000. This city has always tried to be very, very strong in parks and recreation. The only thing that's probably held us back from expanding our current facilities is the fact that we have not had a funding source.
If I could make a comment on that, because Mr. Curry indicated that you have this issue concerning what the current ratio is, and if your current ratio is, say, 3.5, then the idea of why you can't create a 5 per 1,000 ratio is you don't want to cause the new residents to create a greater level of park than what the community already enjoys. And that is what the Quimby Act says. The issue here is how you calculate the current amount of parkland. For example, if the city has trail systems currently, those could count as part of creating that park ratio. Another thing that in communities we've worked in where the city has joint use agreements with a school district, where school district facilities are available for use for park and recreation purposes, those could go into counting the ratio. Although Doug's report looks thorough, the reality is we haven't had a lot of time to put this together. And so while I agree, I think we agree with what the Act says, I think the actual manner that this is computed, it could be with some additional review, that the reality is that the current ratio is higher than 3.5 if you take some of the other facilities that the city has available into account. So that would be the area that we would need to work with the planning department in getting this finalized.
Mr. Mayor.
Strode.
Are you saying that it's standard that you do include those types of agreements for one, let's say our agreement with the school district and the trails? Are those required to be a part of the calculation?
The act does not say that. It gives you some discretion in terms of making the computation.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is that if we were to make the calculation without that, could that be challenged?
If you wanted to use a lower ratio, let's say that you take these into account and you could get to the 5, but you chose not to calculate it that way and use the 3.5, that would be legally valid. I think there's some discretion whether what number you want to set in terms of trying to come up with your ordinance.
Okay, but let's say that we excluded the trails and any agreements that we had with the school district, and we set a fee based upon that calculation, excluding those things. Is that something that someone could later come back and challenge us on?
You know, people can challenge you on everything. My opinion would
Okay,
be
all right.
that if you left that out, you would win if somebody challenged you if you left it out. On the other hand, if you included it, I think you could win that lawsuit too.
Ed, comments? David, why don't you give him your mic and you take Trish's? Just go one over and everybody's got a mic. Great, thanks.
The act also speaks to that which is outlined in the document, which in this case is the city's general plan. City's general plan doesn't speak to bicycle trails nor sharing as designated parks. So I would hesitate to say that at this late date that could be included as designated parks simply for the matter of reaching a 5 acre per 1,000. And let me just comment under this that the building industry supports the Quimby Act. We have absolutely no problem with that, and we encourage you to adopt it. Having said that, we also encourage you to be fair.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Rode.
Under section 1, which is actually
Section 1, what are you referring to? BIA letter?
Yeah, BIA letter, one of two. Third paragraph. Okay, the last sentence says that that means that you may only exact 3.5 acres under the Quimby Act according to staff's figures. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But we cannot base our numbers on the type of housing.
Well, you're in a different section now.
Yeah, I've moved on. I've moved to the next
Okay.
paragraph.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The Quimby Act is pretty specific about how they figure out how many people are in a household, and that's what you're turning to.
All right. Under our section 2B, we have a list of dwelling unit occupancy factor on the average of household, and then we have the type of household. Can we make any determination based upon the type of household?
Can we based on Quimby Act?
Yes.
Yes.
In taking a look at Quimby Act ordinances adopted throughout Southern California, which we did, and we provided you that information, communities have used two different methods of adopting the occupancy figure for housing. One is a standard average for the city, which in Palm Springs is 2.05. If you take a look at page 2 of our worksheet, or the bottom section of the exhibit over there on the left, there's an occupancy factor based upon housing type. As you can see, for single family, it's 2.13, and for multifamily, it goes down to as low as 1.63.
And those purposes are just for determining the average number of people in the house solely.
In the household. And what we recommend, and what I believe Ed recommends, is that we use the citywide average of 2.05 so that we make the ordinance as simple as possible.
Okay. Well, I asked that because it says that the act does not allow occupancy factor by housing type.
It does not speak to that, that's correct. I have quoted the language in the act which speaks to the census, the latest census being utilized as the vehicle.
Okay.
And both of those sets of data are from the latest census.
The building industry is telling you not to use housing type, and staff is recommending not to use housing type. So there's a consistency in what is being suggested to you as to how to do this.
You have an established acceptable average that you're both willing to.
What you're
proceed on.
suggesting is on this sheet here?
No, in other words,
No, it is not.
No, it says staff
No.
recommendation. See,
That's my point. What he's saying is different from what he's recommending.
No, but it's in
No.
your staff report.
Where?
The one he gave out here. This one.
it says on the report, A says staff recommendation. The staff recommendation is to use this overall average number. It's not to use B, which is occupancy by housing type.
We agree with staff.
Okay.
And just to let you know, the city of Indio uses the same type of rate or multiplier based upon type of housing.
Okay.
which is what it says.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Sir.
Could I make a suggestion? Let me walk
Why don't you do your whole
through
presentation?
the 6 or 7 points, and that way you can see how it fits together and what the fee is at the end. And then we can come back in and take a look at the decision-making points that we need to make tonight. The first item that we've already discussed fairly thoroughly has to do with the issue of number of acres, 3.5, existing per thousand. We've listed the parks here. We've also taken a look at, the issue and discussed 5 acres of parkland per thousand, 4 acres or 3.5, and we've indicated we have to take a look at those multipliers and work with Ed. Whenever I work with Ed, I always prefer to have his support because he brings a pretty substantial investment community to our community. So this one tonight, we're going to defer until next week, and we'll give you some ranges of the fee in your packet for the weekend, so you can see what the range of cost would be if we were to drop it down to a 3.5. So you could take a look at that. Item number 2 on the worksheet has to do with the average household size. I think there's concurrence with staff in the industry to use the 2.05 figure in that one. The next issue that we need to talk about is the cost of acquisition and development of parkland. That's item 3 in your worksheet. For the purposes of this evaluation, we took a look at parkland or residential land in the city. We looked at high-density residential land, low-density, central part of the city, north central part of the city, south part of the city, and came up with ranges from $25,000 to $150,000 per acre. I can tell you there's a few places it probably goes above 150, but it's really not showing up in comps and sales right now, but there's people asking for more. For purposes of evaluating the cost of acquisition and the fee, we used $50,000 per acre as a land value. We could have used 25, 150, we used 50 because that's where you're probably going to see the bulk of the residential development in that, and it's also the more moderately priced property. Cost to develop a park. Basic park facilities, recreation, landscaping, tot lots, maybe a little bit of equipment, $150,000 an acre to build a park. If you want to upgrade that to having more recreation facilities, water features, athletic fields, an upgraded park, you're probably in the $200,000 per acre range, and I think the La Quinta Community Park is at $200,000 an acre. We contacted 3 different sources for that information, our own parks department. We contacted 2 design firms that design parks. And one of the firms at least has designed a park here in the Coachella Valley recently, if not more than one. So we think these are reasonable numbers, and the good news is all three sources came up with the same figure. The issue that I think Mr. Kibbe will have some additional comments on has to do with capital facilities. I'd like to come back to that, and that's, should the city include community buildings, pools, dog parks, things of that nature, and we'll come back to that point. At this point, what we've factored in is that according to the city's general plan, we have 96 acres of parkland yet to develop. So that's what we're using, right out of the general plan, and we're using the figures on the high end of the park facilities, not the low end, to come up with the 96 acres.
And what ratios are you using to get to 96 acres?
That's not a ratio, that's going to the general plan map and looking at each park that we have yet to build or parks that we have planned for expansion, and that totals up to 96 acres. We have to base this on the 96 acres of future parkland.
If you get to that full build-out and your full population, what's your ratio at that point? 3.5, 5?
I mean,
What's your population doing?
If I can try to answer that, Mr. Mayor, council members.
This is Larry Menez. Larry's our principal planner, and Larry's been my behind-the-scenes number cruncher. He's the data guy tonight.
Stay behind the scenes, Larry.
If you, taking the general plan data and looking at the different land uses and looking at a range of minimum, maximum potential for each category, and then applying the census, average household size, excuse me, I'm off a little bit. The using ratio of 0.5, you're looking at 96 acres.
So the numbers work.
The numbers work in that instance, sure. Yeah, that's correct. Just looking over my numbers.
So are you saying that if you use a ratio of 3.5 for what the projected growth is, it would not yield 96 acres?
That's correct, because it's a lower ratio, so you're going down to a 60 acre.
See, the
Yes.
general
Goes
plan
down a little
indicates 5 acres per 1,000 is the intended goal of the general plan,
That's correct.
right? And what I'm trying to figure out is, what does the 96 yield us at ultimate build-out? If you get
As
to
far as a
96,
ratio.
yeah, if you get to
We'll-
96
we'll have-
acres and you go to full build-out, pick a number, you tell me what it is, where are we by ratio at that point?
If
Do we
you-
meet the general plan goal of 5 acres per 1,000, or are we substandard?
If you decide tonight on using, well, it sounds like there's a consensus to use a 2.05, it just kind of changes the ratio a little bit here. I have, my spreadsheet indicates that applying a 0.005 to 1, you're going to get about 101 acres at build-out for new park.
And I just asked Troy.
Oh, the
how much-
population?
No, I asked how much available acreage was
Sure.
there, and the answer was 2,200 acres.
Yeah, apologize. There was a couple of different sources I'm looking at here, and this is the most current. There's 2,500 acres
2,500.
of residential vacant land that is estimated to be developable. These are just projections.
I gotta scratch that number.
Okay.
When you really start looking at this, there are some very wide variables to take a look at. You could say, we're gonna have 100,000 people in town, depending on how many people, how many developers build at maximum density versus not maximum density. So if you wanna get into the numbers games of trying to use the multipliers, we've had to make some assumptions in doing this, because I can tell you, a few years ago, every developer was trying to hit 100% maximum density they could get on the property. Councilman Mills was about the only architect that could do it consistently. Reality. Today, most developers on multiple family residential land are not anywhere near maximum. So our population figures based upon a whole number of things are going to be very variable. The other thing, obviously, as far as how many people actually live here today, we could have some changes relative to just seasonal occupancy. That can change. So when you start playing with the statistics on general plan build out, you're going to be able to play the statistics back and forth. When we came up with the target of 96 acres, we basically did what the map or the Quimby Act says. We took a look at what's in the general plan. We added it all up, and our general plan says at the end of the day, we should have somewhere around 96 acres of additional parkland. That's what the general plan says. It may not be perfect 5 per thousand, but I couldn't tell you today how many people are going to live here. I don't think anybody could because of occupancy factors, seasonal occupancy. So we're using some multipliers to try to get the figure. We'll go back in and take a look at those numbers. You've asked a question that, we'll do some math, and if our numbers are wrong, which we're not telling you we're perfect, we've been getting variables all day. So we've been crunching numbers all day today. So we'll take a look at that. If you take a look at the way we've looked at it, absolute maximum, or the high end per acre construction value, plus a full capital improvement program, the total amount of park revenue, or excuse me, cost would be somewhere between $25 and $29.6 million for park facilities. In the ordinance that we've looked at in other communities, they've used a figure. Should new development pay for 100% of this figure, or should they pay for a percentage of it? Indio chose 75%. What we put in as a suggestion is that we look at a 75% new development payment for those new parks. So it's not just the new development that pays for it. If we take a look at what the city has been doing for a number of years, we've been investing about $300,000 a year in parks. And if you multiply that out for a 20-year period, that's about 20% of this type of cost. So we figure that we're doing a pretty good job of getting our percentage. From the standpoint of sources to augment the parks, we have a number of sources, grants, different types of ballot measures and the like, so there's an additional source of revenue out there. From the standpoint, if you take a look at this figure of 25 million to almost, 29.6, 75% of it, and you add the capital, you break it down to 75%. What we're looking to raise through development fee is somewhere between $20.7 million and $24.3 million. Decisions that we need the council to take a look at. You want to use the lower park cost, $150,000 per basic park facility, or $200,000. We think in this community, with the types of facilities that we're going to need, we'd encourage you to go with the $200,000 figure. We need some direction on that this evening, so we can then go back in and refresh our numbers for your ordinance adoption. From the standpoint of capital improvement cost, what should be included in the Quimby type fee ratio, what we've done is put together with the Parks Department, an outline of how we would come up with capital costs. We've already talked about the cost to develop parkland. The capital facility estimates that we put in to our estimates have to do with taking a look at a new community center, possibly a new skate park, one neighborhood type community pool that's consistent with the type of pool that La Quinta put in according to the designer of that park. Another dog park, that figure comes to $5.9 million. We then also looked at the existing CIP, Parks and Recreation Program, which is $2.4 million roughly. We added that up. and basically said, if the council wants to add in capital facilities, future facilities, the expensive items, we felt that using about a 5.9 figure of future, 2.3 for CIP program that's already in the CIP program from Parks and Rec. We put that amount in as the CIP, and I think Mr. Kibbe has a concern about that amount as far as the ordinance that's before you, or at least the worksheet that's before you. So the council needs to make some decisions as to whether or not you want to include capital facilities, how much you want to include relative to that. If you take a look at where our fee is, and I'll get to that in a minute, you know, we're certainly in the ballpark with other Southern California communities with when you break this down to a per unit fee. Council direction point again would be what level of cost recovery you want to try to get from new development under this fee, 75, 80, or 100%, and staff has been looking at the 75% figure. From the standpoint of examples, if you start then trying to calculate this into what is the fee, we took a assumed project, 60-unit single-family detached project, the occupancy factor that we've already discussed, land value of $50,000 an acre, and a $200,000 park acquisition and development plus the CIP cost. And if you take a look at that type of development, the fee would range depending on the multipliers you use. From, if you just used $150,000 without the CIP, the fee would be $1,500 a unit. If you use $200,000 an acre without the CIP, it would be roughly $1,800 a unit. If you used $150,000 with the capital improvement program, about $2,158 a unit. And if you come back in and use $200,000 an acre with the CIP, it's about $2,400 a unit. Obviously, if you change any of these factors, this number changes. Indio is about $1,400 a unit, depending on which type of housing that you look at. Some of the cities in the Coachella Valley only charge for land acquisition cost, so their fee per unit is very low. Those cities also just happen to be the cities with very large cash reserves. So if you look at Indio, they're trying to develop new parks with an expanding population. They're in this range. Some of the other cities, such as Rancho Mirage and Palm Desert, they really just look towards land acquisition, and their fee is quite low on a per unit basis. From the standpoint of where does this stand relative to fees in Southern California, it's in the ranges. We saw fees as high as almost $7,000 a unit. We've seen a number of fees, and we gave you a worksheet. City of Lake Elsinore did a study, and we saw a number of cities with fees in this ballpark range, and then a number of cities with a lesser fee. The next item that the council needs to consider is developer credits. That's in the report. It's really not a decision-making point. One of the key issues that will come up at next week's public hearing, I'm sure, is whether or not you want to give credit for a developer that provides or develops a golf course. In the draft ordinance, we've recommended that you not give credit for golf courses, just as we didn't use the golf course in calculating our 5 per 1,000. It's a fairly limited population recreation amenity. It's a fee-for-service type amenity. Doesn't provide general parks and recreation amenities to the community. So we recommend that you not give credit for a golf course, but if somebody builds traditional park-type facilities, we should give them some credit for that. Up to, the way the ordinance is written, up to 50% of the required land dedication or in lieu fee. The idea of this one is to develop public parklands for the general community. Affordable housing, do you want it to be exempt? You want to pay a partial fee, or do you want it to not be exempt and pay the full fee? We're recommending that you just go ahead and exempt it. Affordable housing is already exempted from a number of fees in the Coachella Valley. So we're saying go ahead and exempt affordable housing. That is an overview, and I can tell you that, you know, if you adjust any of these factors, we can come up with different numbers. We made some assumptions to come up with the ordinance that we prepared for you, and we'll certainly try to answer all your questions, and the ones we can't answer tonight, we will answer before next Wednesday.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Ode.
Could we also get some information on the number of cities that utilize capital improvements under Quimby?
We did a fairly reasonable search of other communities and their ordinances, not exhaustive. I can tell you that the best way for me to look at that is probably taking a look at the Lake Elsinore study. And, you know, there are some cities with fairly high fees, and I would have to assume that they put in very extensive park and recreation amenities to get to those fees. We did not have an opportunity to do a full survey. If you'd like that type of information, it would take a bit more time.
I guess I'm looking for some justification for those types of capital improvements under Quimby.
Well, I think the primary issue that we looked at, and, you know, I looked at the ordinance when I got the first draft delivered to my desk. My first call was, can we and should we get into those capital facilities? The city attorney's office did the research, found the Attorney General opinion that you could have a broad definition of recreational facilities, including concert facilities, for a community. So we've drafted an ordinance that basically is fairly broad. It lists a number of recreation amenities as well as library-type facilities that you could fund. And then what we chose as far as developing the fee, because we felt we couldn't do a complete wish list, we fell back to taking a look at the existing Parks and Recreation capital improvement program, and then taking a look at community facilities we may provide in the future.
You know, maybe I could add that maybe a way of looking at this is that the purpose under Quimby is that the future growth will pay to create a level of recreational amenity that is similar to what the current population has paid for over a historic period of time. As an example, if you have a community pool and you feel that you could double the population of the community and that pool could handle the doubling of growth, then there's a good argument not to include a pool in calculating what you need to pay for the growth. On the other hand, if you felt that if your population doubled, there would need to be a pool amenity so that, for example, we were talking about the piranhas and all the people in the lanes and swimming on top of each other. If you felt that if there was a doubling of the population of the community, there would need to be another pool facility, then it would be fair and reasonable to ask the new people coming in through this collection process to pay to create another facility equivalent to what the existing residents enjoy. Now, there certainly, as you can tell, there's been some controversy because it's one thing to just go out and figure out what the value of the land is and set aside the land. It's obviously something else to develop it and to pay to put the facilities on there. And we know when we're looking at a skate park, it's a big difference between having a piece of ground and figuring out how to put the skate park improvements on it. There is a Attorney General's opinion that's dealing with a situation where there was a cultural facility. In other words, it wasn't just a neighborhood park enjoyed by the people within a 3-block radius of the park. It was a community-wide cultural facility And the Attorney General's office said that they thought the purposes of Quimby were broad and that it was reasonable to include that in the calculation of the fee. So when we talked about this last week and we were trying to figure out, what are our amenities that where, again, if you double the population, we need another one. We need something equivalent to what we've got. We decided in our calculation that it was reasonable to include that. We realized that, there could be people that would have different opinions about that, but that was our justification in terms of looking at that.
Okay. Yes. Mr. Mayor, may I join in this comment? Thank you very much. There's no question the Attorney General has given a very broad decision or opinion on a very broad question. The question was very broad. But if you look at the Quimby Act, which is relatively short when you talk about acts, it speaks of land, 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 acreage, land, land. All the way through, it speaks of land. It's always been considered that the meaning of the legislature when they passed the Quimby Act, and if you go back to the original discussion of the Quimby Act, which makes exciting reading, it was that cities needed a way to get land for parks. And understanding that land for parks doesn't a park make, they put in recreational facilities. And that is, as Doug mentioned, the grass, the sprinklers, the playground equipment, the ball fields, that sort of thing. That's all valid improvements to land donated for a park under the Quimby Act. That's how we feel about it. There are ways to build things like swimming pools and that sort of thing, and it's called a park fee. And interestingly enough, you can do a park fee and a Quimby Act because they're separate and distinct things. The beauty of the park fee is that you have to prove that it's needed, and you have to prove the amount that is required or caused by new construction. So that's a good, fair way of doing it. And indeed, under Nolan Dolan, you'll find yourself doing the same thing under the Quimby Act, but it's just a little more difficult for the industry to say, hey guys, you really got to do this because Nolan Dolan requires it. So we're not saying don't build your swimming pools. We're not saying don't build those things. We're saying don't misuse, in my way, don't misuse the Quimby Act to accomplish this. And that's the point we're making. So in response to the good attorney and the good planner here, we're not against Quimby. We're just saying use it right.
Doug, you got a 98-acre deficiency to get the full build-out. And in doing some crunches of numbers based on your 98 and assessing it at 150,000 an acre or 200,000, I get larger numbers than you do. At 98 at 150, I get 14,007,000. And at 98 for 200,000 an acre, I get a 19,006,000. And the numbers you've got here for total estimated acquisition and development for fees comes quite a bit lower than that. Is this based on a percentage of that?
Mr. Mayor, it is an error in my calculation, and I will adjust that. So I caught that before the meeting myself, so.
I'm just,
Yeah.
yeah. So then if you took the numbers that you've got here, total estimates, and you put in the 14.7 and the 19.6 respectively, and added it to the 8.4, the totals on the back end get even higher.
It's going to go up a little bit. Yes.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor?
Sir.
If I may?
Yes.
First of all, the figure's 96, I believe. But the important thing is that is based on 5 acres per thousand, that figure, and it comes directly out of the general plan. And if you take let me back up and say there's nothing that stops the city from saying we want a 5 acre. That can be done, but you can only charge new construction what is there, in this essence, 3.5 acres. But if you were to take, and if you notice in my section 3B, fourth bullet, the very bottom of the first page, I put out the figures that 3.5 acres per thousand is the responsibility of new construction, and that would be 67.2 acres of that total figure would be the responsibility of new construction under 3.5 acres per thousand. I just wanted to point that out to you when you're doing your figures.
All right, let's do some figures. I did some crunches, unfortunately, based on 98, not 96, so I apologize for the 2-acre discrepancy. But if you use the 250 just for general academic understanding, at 250 acres total build-out of parks and recreations in the great city of Palm Springs, using the ratio of 5 to 1,000, so 5 acres divided into 250 acres, gets you how many? Anybody wager? 50 times 1,000 gets you a total population of 50,000. We're pretty close to it right now. So if 50,000 is our ultimate build-out, you got basically 2,000 residents to close the gap.
Isn't that your growth, Doug?
Yes.
So it's 50,000 in addition to your current population?
No. You got 152 acres today. You got 90, I use 98. You got 96 total, 248. I'm using 250. If your ultimate build-out in acreage is 250 acres of parks, and you assign whatever ratio you want, and I've counted on 5, 4, and 3.5, your ultimate population under 5 per thousand is 50, under 4 per thousand is 62,500 people, and under 3.5 is 71,428 people. So my question is, are those ratios and numbers making sense to any of you? Because they're not making any sense to me. Because our population ultimately is not going to be 50,000 people. We're on the brink of 50 now, and plenty of land to build. So then I wonder if, in fact, I just wonder if, in fact, the 98 is a reasonable expectation for the quality of life that you got now. And again, I go back to the general plan, which does state the goal of the general plan is to get to 5.5 per thousand. That's the plan. Okay, it's the goal. It's not the Quimby, it's the goal. Okay, Doug.
And that's the goal in the general plan.
Yes, sir.
And then if you go back to what is physically designated and shown on the general plan, and add that up at the high park figure for each of the parks, it totals 96. So the way the general plan is crafted today, the physical acreage shown on the map is 96. The goal is 5 per thousand. We would have to add parks to the general plan map to get to the total 5 per thousand. And in doing that, we'd have to show the locations on the general plan. So we took the conservative approach of saying, we're going to use the map and what the map says to get to that 96 figure.
Which, by the way, one of the issues here is, the city does its general plan, and it's got that general plan. Over the course of time, general plans can be revised. A city's image of what it wants in terms of amenities can change. We are, in terms of trying to determine the current fee, we need to use the documents that exist at this point in time. We could certainly go through a process when we're doing the general plan update at looking at that issue, and should, through that process, we decide we wanted more parks, you could certainly, after the general plan was revised, recalculate your fee based upon the new general plan, and then go back and make an adjustment. You should not think that in terms of adopting this ordinance, well, okay, that's it, it's fixed, we're never going to adjust it again, because if you, through the general plan process, alter some of the bases upon which that was calculated, when that happens, then you would be in a position to come back and amend the ordinance to make sure that it's consistent with the way you now view things in the general plan.
Okay. All right. So let's narrow this down to the questions at hand, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Mayor?
Kibbe.
I'm sorry to be a little pushy, but you had promised that I could respond to
You got more to say?
Well,
Oh, Ed. My apologies, my good man.
if I may.
You got that one?
No, I was going to go up here to your thing on there.
We're gonna take a recess, Ed. You go ahead and do anything you want.
I think it's a good idea. I think. What happened to Clubhouse and Barn? You
We're
didn't
not-
talk about that.
We're not including that.
Good, because that's limited too, so that's fine. The problem with the CIP stuff has already been addressed. The main thing I wanted to point out is that every figure up here, whether it's 96, whether it's this, whether it's this, whether it's this, is based upon 5 acres per thousand. And under Quimby, you can only do 3.5 acres per thousand. And so before you got to your discussion, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to make sure that you understood that every figure up here is based on 5 acres per thousand. Thank you.
Now, the only aspect about that is Mr. Kimby is giving you his interpretation. Goes back to the issue we started with, that you can't require the new residents to provide a higher level of standards than what you already have. But the question of what counts towards making that calculation is a different issue. And there are recreational amenities that the staff has not included in the calculation that they put up there of 3.5. So if that number is, if we go back and look at that number, include some of these other factors, it may turn out that the ratio is indeed 5.
So you're saying if it's 5, then we can charge?
Then you can use 5. If your current ratio is really 5, then you can use that ratio in terms of the growth. If your current ratio was 6, you can still only use 5 because Quimby caps the ratio at that number. And if your ratio, when you calculate it out, is 4, then that's the ratio you have to use.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mills.
If you throw in one of our municipal golf courses, which I would say is public recreation, whether you pay for it or not, it's public recreation, we're going to get to the 5 easy, just with one golf course. Forget the trails, forget anything of that. And I don't see anything that says you can't use a golf course, a public access golf course, as part of recreation. Now, I'm not, and I think it's. I mean, I'm not saying that we need any more public golf courses, but I'm saying that is an open space. It is something that of value for all the residents in the city and the visitors. But it's certainly public open space, and unless I'm mistaken, I don't read anything that says you can't use it. So if our effort is to get to 5, I think that's easily done. And I'm not trying to get to the highest. I'm trying to get to maintaining a quality that we've tried to establish in the city. And I think the flaw in this, the way the proportion is done, is simply that every year you don't have a Quimby, your percentage goes down because you increase the people, but you don't increase the parks. And so if we would have started this 20 years ago, our percentage probably was at 5, not counting golf course, when our population was 30 or 35,000 people. So, it's all a numbers game. It's all a numbers game. And you can take these numbers, do anything with them that you want. And I think we need to determine what we want to do, what level we want. Our general plan currently says 1 to 5, and I think that's what we have said in the past that we want to strive for, and I think that's what we should strive for.
And if we'll go back in, sit down with the city attorney, we'll keep Ed in the loop, and we'll come up with the figure that we feel is justifiable. And if it's 3.5, we'll probably be back with 3.5. If it's 5, it'll be 5. I think I've at least heard that there's an interest in trying to keep the best ratio that we can. And if we can convince Ed between now and next Wednesday that we can go to 5, I think Ed would say we have the right to go to 5.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Make a suggestion that, maybe a subcommittee of council to work with staff this next week to be able to get this so that it's the way it should be by Wednesday. And you two seem to be really into this, so.
I'm into a lot of things, but that shouldn't mean I should be on a subcommittee. I got a lot of interest.
You got a spare hour.
I mean, what we could do is take a blush look at this for about an hour sometime next week, because you'll need time to prepare. And it's not as though we start first thing tomorrow morning, because I'll be at Sunline first thing tomorrow morning. So if you needed a council to go ahead and look at it, I'd be more than willing to do it, whether you want an official subcommittee or otherwise. It's only between now and Wednesday. But we can at least help guide this a little bit. I'm okay with that. I can find an hour sometime next week.
Chris? Ron?
Well, I think you've done a lot between the last time we talked, and I appreciate Ed being here. I really do, Ed. I know we give you a hard time, but that's just the nature of our relationship, and it's a good one.
Appreciate the opportunity.
But we wanted you here at the table and wanted you to get your honest opinion of what's going on, and I think it's part of the process. I did run a copy, though, of the Lundgren decision. I thought I had it in file, but I didn't, so I asked staff to get a copy. The issue that was before the Attorney General was whether or not a theater could be funded. And it was his interpretation that you could actually purchase an existing one, or you could purchase the land on which the theater could be constructed, or you could fund the construction of a theater that would exhibit. And he went through this thing from dance recitals to concerts to cultural activities to art shows to music to drama. I mean, he defines what recreation is. And as you said, it's very broad. I mean, if you smile when you're doing it, Quimby can pay for it. Don't get excited back there, okay?
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
for some of us that want to broaden it so we can apply it to many things, it's great. For those of you who want to limit it, it's not so helpful. But 1998, he made a determination. Well, I'm just, maybe I will offer sometime next week if you want to spend some time, help crunch numbers and bring something back. But I think you guys are tracking in a very favorable fashion. I hope to bring this back next week with some ability to sort of corral the data down to a decision point that the council can give thumbs up on. Council okay with where we're at so far? You got some concerns you want to tell staff what you want to narrow it down or broaden it to? Again, I want as much flexibility as possible to provide. And what I would appreciate between now and next week is, and I don't know who to get, maybe Tom Kennard can help with this. What was our point in time in, say, the 1970s when we did Prop R and Prop R got built? Because Prop R jettisoned, I mean, it rocketed us into a whole different level of quality of life, where all these amenities became the citizens of Palm Springs, paid for with tourism dollars, mind you, and all of a sudden this little hamlet had incredible amenities. Snapped point in time, what kind of ratios existed then? You had a pool with a population of 27,000 people. Desert Highlands built, you bought Francis Stevens Park, bikeways were paid for with Prop R. I mean, there's a lot of amenities that came out of Prop R. $6 million then was a lot of money. Now it can't buy a clubhouse, but you know, it was amazing what we got out of it. And at that point, where were we? As Chris said, the ratios were probably different back in those times. And it was a quality of life that those residents in Palm Springs enjoyed that we today don't. And if we don't somehow take action, future residents will have less of a quality of life than what we have. And I think the goal we're trying to get to is how do we at least maintain, if not incrementally increase. And I would not suggest to you that it's the developers only. We talked about a percentage, and you know, we take some of that obligation. But at the same time, not everything we have in Palm Springs will be built by subdivision. There's a lot of infill housing that requires very little infill, very little subdivision act. So all of those new residents, which will in fact increase the demands on services, will not pay Quimby. And I want that taken into consideration because we don't have, where's our arrows? We don't have vast tracts of lands waiting for hundreds of homes to get built. You get 4-plexes and 16-plexes, if they even have subdivisions. You know, it can be strange developments, and it doesn't. I just want that to be taken into consideration.
Well,
Okay?
and Mr. Mayor, to that end, I think that's where Ed was pointing, that what he termed a park fee, that's that's where, that type of housing is where the park fee.
Fair and equitable, yeah.
Yeah, comes into play. And that does make it fair and equitable then.
Just to indicate, I mean, it may be true that in, 1973, based upon the population, there was a level of amenity up here. And from a political standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. The city wants to stay at that level and be consistent. But from a legal standpoint, if the amenity between then and now fell,
Right.
at the date we adopt the ordinance, we're dealing with 2003, not 73.
I understand that. I just want the point in time reference to say, we had this quality, and we took no action from that point to today, and you do see a diminishing in the quality. So
Right.
now, let's acknowledge that and then frame it so that we can at least maintain what we have and even increase it. Because it was amazing back in the 70s what the city had.
The second point I'd like to make, because Mr. Kibbe's made.
Is Mr. Quimby here? Are you Mr. Quimby?
He's actually dead, but.
The truth will out.
Mr. Quimby.
One of the things when a community is putting an ordinance like this together is the issue of trying to be fair and reasonable in equity, as was said earlier. There are a couple things in here that staff has, in fact, I think, tried to propose something and has not pushed it to the max. For example, the issue, they put the $300,000 in there, which is the amount already being contributed. And so they in essence kind of took that out, saying that's a level of contribution that the residents are currently making towards recreation amenities, and so the presumption is we will continue making that level of contribution.
Out of our CIP.
Out of the CIP. So that we're not trying to fund the creation of those improvements out of this new fee. So that's an effort to make this reasonable. And the second thing is utilizing the 75% instead of the 100%. That you could go in and argue it ought to be 100%. But staff has basically said, no, we will calculate this on the basis that there is a continued expectation that the current residents will continue investing in what the facilities are here. So there's two aspects that have been put into this, which I hopefully the BIA appreciates, that the city is not pushing every little part of the envelope to get to the most extreme number. So I just wanted to make that last point.
Okay. Are you okay with where we're at right now? You want to ask any final questions?
No, sir. What we will do is we'll continue to burn up the calculator and run some numbers, and when we're fresh, we'll double check them. And we'll get back to you, and if we have any updates by the weekend, we'll give you those updates so you can see where we're at. We're still, hoping to have an urgency ordinance on your agenda, as well as a regular ordinance next Wednesday, and we'll do our best to try to have something before you. And to the greatest degree possible, we'll try to make Ed happy so that the council chambers next week could be considered a recreational facility, and we can use Quimby Act monies to expand it.
Recreation at its finest, huh, Mr. Quimby?
Yes, indeed.
It's a theater.
These circles, Doug, only represent a general area in which you think we might need some regulations.
Yes,
Sites, per se.
the general plan did not tie down exact sites. It said these are the areas where we anticipate needs for additional park facilities.
Okay. Ed, thanks for coming out.
Thank you very much.
Always appreciate it. Thanks for coming up. Gentlemen, thank you from planning. Let's turn to our summer parking schedules. I believe this is Mr. Ogburn's piece. What? Oh. What did I say? What did I say? Is that what I said?
All right.
Watch.
Okay.
Good evening. It's a tough act to follow, so to speak.
Never follow a Quimby.
That's right. Parking. Did you want to introduce? Oh, yeah, yeah.
Boy, that's a buck being passed,
It's
huh?
like handoff. I know that the city manager and council received at least one complaint from a merchant on Palm Canyon Drive that received a parking ticket on Sunday morning, and she claimed that she was the only car on the street, and she was only parked out there to show people that she was actually open and maybe somebody could be interested in coming in. And I sympathize with the concern, and I know in meeting and talking with the Main Street Board board members and talking with merchants downtown, there was a concern. And, there are some attitudes, but attitudes are changing, as Joy mentioned in her comments in downtown. And I think they're changing, I think, for the better. And there's a better concern for the need to have some enforcement. Right now, as we set, we have a 2-hour parking limit on city streets in downtown. We have a 3-hour limit in the parking lots and the parking structure. And enforcement and ticketing is done on a 7-day-a-week basis. And one thing we forget about is that the enforcement people need to be out there at least for red zones and for handicap parking. If you say we're not going to enforce on certain days, then that means that red zones and handicap parking are not enforced either. So right now, as a practical matter, ticketing takes place from 9:30 a.m. until 6 p.m. on the city streets, and from 9:30 a.m. until 8 p.m. in the city parking lots and structure. In talking with many of the merchants, the ones that had the strongest opinions were the large restaurants, and the large restaurants, particularly those south of Tockwitz. And they said, please, we need to have enforcement at least on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If there is a public relations desire to say, okay, we're going to kind of ease up in the summer, we've got to have it on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The parking structure continues to be, at those peak periods, even in the summer, a bit of a problem. So I got some real strong reactions.
Problem defined as what? Being utilized heavily?
Yeah, that they see a problem if we would, there is heavy use like on Thursday nights and Friday nights and so on. But if we stop enforcing altogether, then we have a real problem when we try to start up again. I think we had that phenomenon when the parking meters were taken out of the lots, and it was all of a sudden no limits, and then all of the city lots turned into employee parking lots. I mean, that's what they were.
Yeah.
So there was a real concern about totally eliminating the ticketing. So there is a school out there that says, just let it all go. It's the summer. Let's ease up. Let's not do it. There's a school out there that says we really need to keep something in place, and if you want, maybe we should just keep it like it is. But they're willing to look at the possibility, and this is a proposal for you. Am I doing okay? Is Joy? I mean, she's all right. She hasn't left yet. There was concern that, well, maybe there ought to be different standard north of Tockwitz, south of Tockwitz. Well, there's a certain logic to that, but then you get into a double standard, and I think we really open a big can of worms if we do that. What we're proposing as a consensus, we do have an ability, the enforcement people, to give tickets or to give courtesy notices. Courtesy notice says, hey, have a good day. Realizing you're overparked, we're not ticketing today, but we are on other days. Courtesy notices, the consensus I got would be that courtesy notices could be given on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Courtesy notices could be Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and the enforcement people could give, their instructions would be to give courtesy notices on those days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday would keep the same procedures as they are now. They would be tickets given, with a caveat. And in talking, I talked with a number of people, including John Becca with APCOA, and he had some suggestions. He says, we can do a better job with the judgment factor. If it's Sunday morning and there's one car on the street, we really shouldn't give a ticket. But it's hard sometimes to get people to maintain a consistency in that regard. So they're willing to, and I said the tricky areas are Thursday morning and Sunday morning. Because when you think about it, it starts to build Thursday about noon in advance of Village Fest, then goes through, and then Sunday morning's kind of slow, and downtown doesn't really start to pick up until about Sunday noon. So you can't say don't ticket on Sunday, because Sunday afternoon can get pretty busy. So the proposal is that if we want to give sort of a public relations twist to this for the summer, you know, it's hot. We're going to be tearing up the Desert Fashion Plaza. We're going to be doing some other things downtown. No ticketing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Ticketing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but Thursday morning and Sunday morning, use a little better judgment. That's basically what we're saying. And keep the red zone and the handicap services going. That's basically what I got out of a lot of telephone calls and talking about this. A lot of nervousness if you just completely not do any enforcement in the summer. What do you do about, you know, and APCO is saying you've got to have 4 days a week or you can't put people on the street. They just won't go. So if you completely do away with enforcement in the summer, then the red zone, the handicap becomes a problem. And starting it back up in the fall becomes a problem. So that's I guess our best offer, our best suggestion to you. And the APCO people said they think they can make that work.
Okay. Council.
I just have a question. I want to make sure I understand. So what you're saying is, one of the suggestions is to pay someone to ride around all day and give a courtesy ticket?
They give courtesy tickets now. Yeah. They would do that. They said they would, on Mondays through Wednesdays, they would give the courtesy tickets.
I see.
And then they give the tickets on Thursdays through Sunday.
I don't know why we're talking about this. I mean, we have beat this thing to death. I think the way we're doing is just fine.
And just continue the same level of enforcement through the summers.
Yeah, I think to keep consistency, it's like, well, let's see, Tuesday I can park north of Tockwitz, or
Right.
that's just,
Yeah.
I just think we just ought to keep it the way it is.
Okay.
People have learned, the employees learn. I just.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mills.
I also think we should keep it the way it is, but I do think that the common sense of APCOA could be made. They could be made aware that, you know, as you said, Sunday morning there's nobody on the street and you're the only car parked on the street. You know, drive by. You know, just don't give a courtesy notice. Don't just use common sense. And I think that will go a lot further than, you know, courtesy notices and people saying, well, you know, I thought it was Wednesday, you know, the courtesy notice day, but
Yeah.
I mean, I just.
Well, yeah, it opens up a lot of concerns. But but the notice itself, which nobody will read, will say that you will be ticketed on Thursday through Sunday.
Right.
So there's a way to do it, and we were trying to position, if council felt there was a need for more of a public relations softening during the summer, that's a way to do it, but I concur with both of you, it makes our job a lot harder, ultimately, because in the fall, it's all going to get confused.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go and change the signs and say you can park here 3 days a week, which would be the way to do it if you're going to do it. I think if we just leave it the way it is, we built the parking structure for a reason. You know, whether or not, you know, to encourage people not to use the parking structure is not a good thing to do, I don't think. And so I think if APCOA can just be told to be reasonable, use common sense, and then people know that if they're parking there, there's a chance they're going to get a ticket. And they may not get one on this Sunday. They might not get one Sunday at 10, but they'll probably get one Sunday at 2, and they're just on their own.
Right.
And I think that's a better means of handling it. But I appreciate your.
I concur. I mean, I was hearing several, as we know in downtown, you don't get 100% consensus on anything, particularly on parking. And there are voices out there saying just let it go, let it go, let it go. But I think the risks of that are pretty great, as others will point out.
Okay. Strode.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think that the common sense factor that Chris talked about can go a long way, and perhaps sometimes when they're citing people, they could give that courtesy citation, you know, rather than giving a ticket. But the other changes, you know, I don't really like to talk about the parking until we have a cohesive parking plan for, yes. But let's keep it the same, but really focus on the common sense factor.
Okay. Good.
Terry, good to see you. Thanks for coming down.
Why was I here?
Quimby, that's right.
I took
Everything you ever wanted to know about Quimby. All right, anything else on parking? A little common sense then, all right. Let's go to our study session docket, and Mr. Reddy.
David. Thank you. Mayor and members of council, the ultimate question on the study session docket for this evening is what we should agendize for the meeting of the 30th. As you know, we have that extra study session on the 30th. But however, we also know that we are scheduled 4 public hearings on the 30th, since we, in theory, are going dark in August, especially coming out of planning, are several public hearings. We know we have 4 now, with the possibility on the 30th. It's a study session meeting. We know we're going to have 4 public hearings. The clerk informs me there's a possibility of 2 more, but that would be the limit. So the one thing we had suggested is we were going to have the Walk of Stars scheduled. However, Mr. Frenzel had indicated that he may not be able to be here. Apparently, he is going to have his surgery later. However, we were going to move that back. The question is, we may have to have some discussion with council, because if we do it in September, that may not give us enough time to renew the contracts for the fall Walk of Stars activity, whatever that's going to be. Or we would just suspend activity until later in the fall or winter time. That's the other option. So that we either has to be agendized without him for that discussion, or we would go forward with it.
He has a board. There's a board. Are they prepared? Are they meeting to bring the presentation to us? I mean, I understand about his surgery. I'm certainly sorry that he can't be here, but what about the board?
We certainly could ask members of the board to be here for that meeting.
I mean, if it's going to interfere with what's going to happen in the fall, I think we should.
Okay. And then the next question is then, would you want any of your other items before you to be on the 30th?
I don't think it's fair to have the Walk of Stars without him. I think give him a courtesy ticket and wait till.
Courtesy ticket? Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you offer it to him how he wants to proceed? We'll
there you
wait
go.
for him, but if he says, no, I want it done because of the schedule, please
Fine.
go without me.
Yeah, that's fine.
But at least offer to him
Yeah,
the
that's
option
good.
that we want him to be there, but if
That's
not.
a better way.
And that's the 30th you got that scheduled? I thought, wasn't that a special meeting based on all the hearings? So you had 2 meetings? Okay, we'll split it.
Mayor, in the way that you just phrased that, does that imply that if he was not able to come and participate in some sort of a study session, that the city would not support him going forward with these presentations until that had occurred?
I would suggest that I would not support going forward until we can resolve the issues before us. I offer him the opportunity to come down.
Right.
If he chooses not to and allows his members of his board to be delegated the task, we'll accept that. We'd like him to be here. It's not imperative. If it's not in his eyes, send someone down. Let's move this along. We'd like to expedite it for his purposes, because the season will be upon us in short order.
We will
Okay.
make that request.
So on the 30th, you've got study sessions scheduled, and how many public hearings?
We have 4 now with the possibility of 2 more.
Are they big items?
I only suggest that we take a look at how the public hearing starts stacking up on the agenda, because no one's going to want to do study session work after long, lengthy public hearings. So let's just see how that's working. If you've got short ones and they're easy, no big deal, but if they're long, complex, time-consuming ones, I just don't think the council's going to want to go on and on.
Maybe we could ask.
You're not here on the 30th?
Maybe we could ask Mr. Evans to comment on what he has coming out of the pipeline from Planning Commission.
So far for the 30th, we have 2 sections of the zoning ordinance to amend. They were very quiet public hearings with the Planning Commission, both of which we've been briefing the council along, so that should be fairly simple. We've got several development projects that had very quiet public hearings. We have one that came off of the agenda today that the developers asked us if we could get it to council by the end of July. It would allow them to go into development plan so they could maybe catch part of next year's season. And there was one commenter on that one. So everything we have public hearing-wise relatively brief, and it's going to probably be in the number of about 4 from the Planning Commission.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Oden.
Then perhaps we shouldn't look at putting anything else on the 30th. I think that's sufficient. 4 plus whatever we have for our study session that evening.
No. They have to have these other two. So this is the they have to.
That's part of the 4. That's part of the 4. Those 2 are part of the 4. Yeah, those 2 are part of the 4.
Under your topic scheduled as required, does the visitor center have more work beyond what we took tonight? Is it pretty much done? Visitor center done?
Well, that's what we'll need to come back on that special meeting in August, probably around the 13th. For a very short meeting.
Noon.
Could be. Okay. Other topics to be discussed. You've got obviously this list, and you can add to it. The one on the bottom of that topics to be discussed is this cat declaw ordinance. You know of Dr. Conrad's, Tracy Conrad's concern on that. Have you gotten a briefing on that or a packet? And what's your interest in that? She's looking for a direction. Do you want additional information? Do you want to deal with it? Do you want a presentation?
Well, the information I think is clear.
Just speaking to the mic. Do you want to go forward with it? Otherwise, we'll just put it on the council for, you want action? You want to go to study session? What do you want? Well, it was something that was requested of us to look at, and the question is, do you want to say you don't want to look at it, or you do want to look at it? She's waiting for us.
I think we should look at it. It goes along with it. But certainly not on the 30th.
Is your mic on?
Yeah.
When do you want to look at it? Well, if you don't want to work on the study session docket, we'll go home. But you want to work on this or not? Do you want to put these things in some kind of priority?
Well, I mean, I could say do it on the 30th, but I'm not going to be here, so that's hardly fair. So
That isn't.
Well, what dates are we looking at? 23rd? Nothing the 23rd, so it's the 30th, and you're saying there is no 30th.
September. I mean, obviously, I think for anything that's going to go on. And Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Roden.
I think we're looking at September for any of these additional issues that may go on. We know that the signage for the cabs is already for September, and over the next month, the staff may have some issues that may arise and just prioritize those for us.
That's special events ordinance. Obviously, with what occurred tonight, maybe that's something we should get at the first part of September.
Okay.
The admissions tax, I mean, if we were going to do that, well, let's see.
Well, that raises-
That would be a Prop 218, so that'd be a ballot issue. We should do that before August if we were going to do that, right?
That's a good question. That raises a good point.
why I'm here.
The subcommittee wasn't sure if council wanted to go forward with that this election cycle, which means it would have to be, obviously, in the month of July, the council would have to decide.
To put it on the 30th.
But actually, that may not be enough time. David, would you need that on the 23rd?
Well, if you want it on 30th, you'd need to have it in a form that you could act on it. So if you want to talk about it and get some input, you need to have it on the 23rd.
What's the last day?
It's like,
August 8th to add it.
so if you don't act on it on the 30th, you have to come back the first week of August and have another meeting to deal with it. And we could also, again, I know you didn't, the 23rd is kind of booked, but if it was on the 23rd, we could at least talk about it and then try and pull everything
Put it on
together
the
for the
23rd.
30th.
Put it on the 23rd. That way we can deal with it, because if we decide to do it, we can get it on the ballot for November. That'd be
Right.
great. The general plan update, I think that should be the first part of September. I think downtown development should be the first part of September. proclamation process, I don't really care. And the communication master plan, what's that?
I don't know what that is.
What does that mean?
That's the communications program I was talking about.
So far, it's working really
It
well.
sure
isn't it? I don't
is.
know what you mean.
I know what it is. What's the issue on the multi-species habitat? Do you need to brief council at all?
We have a meeting.
I guess I still don't.
The agencies soon. I want to brief after the meeting.
So post-meeting, okay. Okay. And the declaw thing, what do you want to do with it? You want, in September?
Yeah.
In the first part of September.
What we'd do, Mayor, is the first meeting in September, we'd have another docket review.
And you got a meeting scheduled for August 6th?
13th.
13th, that would just
There's nothing
before-
scheduled on August 6th?
But maybe,
No.
maybe we'll have to have a special meeting to be able to deal with the admissions tax.
Although we could do that on the 30th. If we have that on the study session on the 23rd, with your
Okay.
direction, we deal with that
Sure.
on the 30th.
Okay.
And then we'd come back for the
if-
visitor center on the
So-
13th.
So it's in our packet Friday. Good.
Okay. Is that it?
Okay, I think we're set through the early September, and then we'll have another docket review then. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Done? Done. 9:57, seeing no further business before the council, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you. Good night.